You got to wait for a gapper.
That is fair. Down the right field line. Giambi on his way to third. And they're going to wave him around. The throw misses a cutoff man. Shot into the plate. Out of the plate. Derek Jeter with one of the most unbelievable plays you will ever see by a shortstop.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. A snowy Wednesday in greater Cincinnati from the heart of Hamilton, Ohio. We welcome you to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Thom Brennaman. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. That's Eastern Time. You can join us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We always ask you please subscribe to the program. You can also find us streaming on Facebook, Chatterbox Sports page. If you'd prefer to join us in podcast form, search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman and you're dialed in. Coming up in a matter of moments, our buddy Ace Boogie, the saner half of the Cincinnati podcast. So we'll be getting to him in just a second. Bengals begin preparing in earnest today for Sunday's AFC Championship game in Kansas City. Players had the day off yesterday, but now the real work starts. Game planning for Patrick Mahomes, Chad Henne. Cincinnati has beaten the AFC West champ Chiefs 3 straight times in the last calendar year, including last year's AFC title game that went to overtime. Kansas City is preparing for Patrick Mahomes playing in that game, despite the fact that he injured his ankle quite severely last week against Jacksonville. We might know more later today as to what kind of condition that ankle is in. The line on the game, the Bengals are favored by 1.5. Kickoff 6:30 on CBS. NFC title game can be found on Fox. That's at 3 o'clock on Sunday. Philly and the Niners. Philly a 2.5-point favorite. Aaron Rodgers hasn't decided if he's playing next year, but he said yesterday that he understands his contract could be a problem for the Packers or any other team that might try and trade for him. Therefore, he's open to redoing the deal. In baseball, congrats to former Red Scott Rowland. He was elected to baseball's Hall of Fame by the narrowest of margins last night. The 7-time All-Star got 76% of the ballots cast in his 6th year of eligibility. 75% is needed to get in. Just missing was Todd Helton, formerly of Colorado. He got 72%. The next 3 in order were Andrew Jones, Billy Wagner, and Gary Sheffield. Talked about Jeff Kent unbelievably yesterday, only 46% of the vote. College hoops last night, Ohio State continues to struggle, losing to Illinois. Buckeyes are 11-9 on the year and in serious danger of not making the tournament. Ohio University beat Western Michigan. Kentucky starting to play better, beat Vanderbilt last night. Wildcats now 14-6. Miami falls to Akron. Number 11 TCU just demolished Oklahoma. Number 12 Iowa State beat number 5 Kansas State 80-76. A big one tonight for Xavier in the Big East. The number 13 Muskies travel to number 19 UConn. The Muskies beat them early in the year at Cintas 83-73, and Dayton plays tonight at Rhode Island. All right, let's get right to it. Many in the chat, let's get to our buddy Ace Boogie. Now, he's not going to be the wild man that Zim Hude, his partner in crime on Cincinnati, the podcast is. Ace Boogie, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us on short notice. I know you're a working man. You got lots of meetings today. Tell me your early thoughts about this Bengals-Kansas City clash on Sunday.
I feel very good about it, and I think that the Bengals should feel very confident about it. This is a team that they're very familiar with. And now you have not only that, a Pat Mahomes that's coming into this game with one leg. I feel like they almost lost to the Jaguars. So I think things are definitely sliding in the Bengals' favor with this matchup as it's coming up.
All right, now you are a guy that watches a lot of game film, all 22 stuff. You like to break stuff down. It's been noted the style of defense the Bengals have played against Kansas City in the past. They'll drop guys deep. They'll let them get their yards, but then really shut it down inside the red zone. Okay, that worked the last 3 times.
Right.
Conceivably, Mahomes is not going to be the guy that can run around a lot. I made note yesterday that he threw more passes outside the pocket than any quarterback in the NFL so far this year. Do you suspect that the game plan or strategy of Lou Anarumo changes knowing that they know that you know, right? And also knowing that Mahomes may be limited in some of the things he can do?
Yeah, I definitely think that they will switch it up for sure. I think the Jags defensive coordinator, he did a misservice last week of not really sending that blitz and sending that pressure to test that ankle. I think Lou will. We saw Lou do some things against Josh Allen where he took some of the guys like Mike Hilton, gave them super depth on that, and still sent the blitz from that angle. I think that you'll see that for sure. I think that they'll still rush 4. I think that they'll drop 8. But I think when they get into the third downs, possibly the fourth downs, I think you will see them go after Pat Mahomes. Now, you don't really want to blitz Pat Mahomes, but that's 100% healthy Pat Mahomes. As you said, he gets out of the pocket. I don't think he can do that with the ankle. So I think that Lou and this defense definitely will test that ankle and definitely will send some pressure and switch it up.
All right, let's shift over to the Bengals on offense. Much was made last week before the game. 3 new starters along the offensive line from the quintet that they started 15 games to begin the year, and then guys start dropping. It looks like it's going to be the same 5 again. When you went back and we can look at Pro Football Focus, and they have their opinion on things, on how they grade players. What did you like? Let's start with Jackson Carman. What did you like about his game on Sunday?
Jackson Carman was super physical. I think that that's something that really stuck out to me when you look at the film. The power that he played with, the way he was aggressive. He was what Frank Pollock said that he's looking for, a glass eater. And I felt like it was a lot more solid than what we've seen at Jonah. Obviously, Jonah is battling that injury, has done that for the most part of this year. But I really thought that I liked that. I also like the athleticism, how they used Hakeem Adeniji athleticism to pull and set him up in situations where he's actually one-on-one with the safety or a linebacker. So I really liked what those 3 starters did. And I felt that these guys are not like 5th and 6th round picks, guys that are bums or anything like that. Jackson Carman was the second round pick for a reason. And, now he's back home at his natural position. Looks very comfortable. Could say the same about Hakeem Adeniji. Last year he was playing out of position. Now he's back at tackle. He looks more comfortable. So I think that all of those guys, even Sharping, a lot of those guys looked a lot better on film. I know some people are going to say, hey, it was in the snow. I just think that these guys are focused. Frank Pollock has them playing the right way, and they're going to play AFC North football. It really reminds me very similar to the Browns a few years ago with the offensive line, where they just put their hands on you, mauled you, pancaking guys, being aggressive. And I think that we'll see that again this week from them.
Now, we got differing opinions from a couple of our guests yesterday as to, the front 7 comparing Kansas City's defense to Buffalo's defense. Now, we're talking about without Von Miller, okay, because he didn't play last week. He's been out for a long time with an ACL injury. When you look at Buffalo's defense compared to Kansas City's defense, I don't care about the stats. I'm just curious, when you look at them, the easy thing to do, because of the stats, is to say that Buffalo's a better defense. Do you buy that?
I don't buy that. I think Buffalo isn't the same defense. I mean, this was a team that let Skylar Thompson put up 20-something points on them. I think that the Chiefs actually have a slightly better defense. I think the rookie McBride is playing pretty good. I think that they also have another rookie corner over there that's playing pretty solid. Or McDuffie, I said McBride. McDuffie is playing well. I think when you look at the defensive line, I don't think Buffalo had a Chris Jones. So Chris Jones is playing at an all-pro level this year. I know we've had success against Chris Jones, but that's still a guy that you have to account for. You also have Carlos Dunlap as well. I think that they probably have a little bit of more of a dangerous defensive line. I'm not a believer in Frank Clark. I think that's one of the weak spots there. But then they also have big rookies that are really stepping up this season. So, you even look at the linebackers. The linebackers are pretty good and athletic as well. I would probably say that the Chiefs slightly have a better defense, but I still think that it's a defense that the Cincinnati offense can definitely have success against for sure.
Do you believe, based on what you said a little while ago, and guys getting physical, it sounds like you believe the Bengals are going to try to have, every coach says it, but the Bengals in a lot of games have not been a balanced offensive team. I mean, obviously they played great offensive football, and the numbers speak for themselves. But do you suspect it's going to be really cold, there's a chance it could snow, all those kinds of things? Do you feel like their approach will be they can have success running it against Kansas City like they did against Buffalo last week?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the first time they played them, Samaje Perine went off in that game. They've got two guys, like you said, Joe Mixon. He did his thing last week. I still see them doing that because when you get into the playoffs, you have to be able to establish the run and run the ball, right? So I think him and Samaje Perine definitely will be a part of the game plan. I definitely think it will be balanced. And these guys are going to make big plays in this game for sure. Right before the Bills game, when I saw that snow, I was like, Joe Mixon is going to have him a day, ends up with 105 yards. I could see something very similar. And the thing that they did last week was they did play balance. They passed, but they also established a run because when you want to take control of a game and you want to control the time of possession, especially in that weather, and you want to limit turnovers, running the ball is definitely going to help. And I think that Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine this week are definitely going to be a big part of that game plan.
I'm kind of curious because, your partner in crime, Zim, yesterday, went off on your guy, Chris Jones. Like you said, the Bengals have had success again. He called the guy trash. But Jones has been a pretty good player in this league. I know you're shaking your head. I was too. We get a kick out of Zim, obviously. I'm curious, though, I'm not a big social media guy. You and Zim are big on Twitter and doing your podcasts and all this kind of thing. I got to tell you, there's a part of me when I'm looking at some of this stuff, though, that feels like, and I know Eli Apple is the focal point of a lot of this, but it just seems like there's a lot of smack talking going on here. And I don't know if that's a good thing or whether you're like, hey, the guys are confident and they believe they're going to go in there and win the game. How do you read that? You're on social media all the time.
Yeah, I would probably say there's a confidence for Bengals fans just because of Joe Burrow. We know what this game means. We know from everything that the media said about us, the people on Twitter talked crazy about the Bengals as well, said that we wouldn't make it back to the Super Bowl, we wouldn't make the playoffs. Chiefs fans, it's been kind of like that with them since we beat them last year. A lot of them feel like because the games have been close, they feel like they could have gone other ways. There was a lot of talk about crowd noise. Now for them, they are looking at it as a revenge game. So there is a lot of trash being talked between the Bengals fans and the Chiefs fans. But there's also a respect there. Like, yeah, there is trash talk, but when you jump into these Twitter spaces and you kind of talk, there's a mutual respect because these two teams are the teams in the AFC, and there's a belief, even under the trash talk, that these teams are going to be duking it out possibly for the next decade, especially when you have Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot of trash talking between the two teams. But I think it's more so from Bengals fans' aspect as confidence. The Chiefs fans, they feel like, this is going to be their time to get their revenge, but they're not really realizing that the Bengals are up for this game because we lost in the Super Bowl and they want to get back there. And with them being one game from out of that, man, I don't think that there's another team that wants it that bad.
If there's one area in your game film watching where you say, this worries me about Kansas City, it would be what?
Kansas City, I would probably go with Pat Mahomes just being able to dissect the defense when you do send the blitz, like him being able to find the open guy. Travis Kelce, possibly, that's one guy that you definitely want to keep your eyes on. You're going to want to try to limit him as well. When you look at the run game, Pacheco is a pretty solid running back.
Yep.
A lot of people really talk about him. Pacheco is a guy that they've got to get down. Another guy, I'll tell you, too, another secret weapon, Jared McKinnon. Like, no one talks about Jared McKinnon, but this guy's got like 5 or more touchdowns or something like that. Him out of the backfield, I think, is definitely something that you need to watch for. On defense, I would probably say Chris Jones. I mean, Chris Jones, you just got to make sure that you continue to limit him. And I remember him speaking before the Bengals played them the last game, and he talked about still remembering that Joe Burrow play. So definitely keeping Chris Jones in check on defense for sure.
Well, you know, when you talk about McKinnon, it's interesting you bring him up because I've talked about him frequently on this show even before he won, and people forget. He was the AFC's Offensive Player of the Month in the month of December. I mean, he really stepped up and became a huge force in a Kansas City offense that's primarily known, almost exclusively known, as being a pass-first offense, and they are. But McKinnon has overcome a lot of adversity, a lot of injuries in his career. You know, I've always felt, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, Ace Boogie, but I have always been concerned this entire year about the Bengals' run defense. Now, a lot of people say Baltimore is unique in their run game, and I think that's true. I think they have an extremely unique run game compared to other teams around the league. But there are times this year when I think that this Bengals defense has been susceptible to a good run team, and Kansas City ran the ball well against the Bengals when they wanted to run the ball earlier this season, right?
Yes, they did. I think they really felt like that last game when we played them in the AFC Championship that Andy Reid didn't run the ball enough, especially with them having a lead. I think that you'll definitely see them commit to the run. I will say I do agree with the sentiment that the Ravens are a running team that's in their DNA. There's different things that they do with different heavy sets when you talk about 12 and all of that with jumbo packages to bring guys in to help them block. So I think it won't look like that. But sometimes I almost feel like the Bengals and Lou, they kind of make it seem like you can get rushing yards on them. And then when it comes down to like a third down or when they really need it, he seems to really get in his bag and really trick them. So I think the biggest thing, though, DJ Reader, that man is a running game wrecking ball himself. So I think once they've kind of fill it out, there will be opportunities, I think, like you said, and rightfully so, where the Chiefs may have some lanes to get some yards. But once the Bengals kind of figure them out and make those adjustments, I think that they'll be fine. And it really depends on if the Bengals try to get out to a lead in this game, it's almost going to force the Chiefs to really start to pass. So if this game is close, the run game is going to be a factor, and it is something that they're going to have to stop. So I do agree with you on that. I think that the defense, for the most part, is pretty good. They do have kind of weird moments where it's like, how did that guy get 8 yards on that play? But I think for the most part, they are a pretty solid unit, and I think that they should have some decent performance against the Chiefs running offense.
You know, there was an article written in Yahoo Sports today about the Bengals becoming sort of the villain looking forward in future years in the AFC and in the NFL. You know, I don't think that's such a bad thing. I mean, I think everybody looked at New England as being a villain forever and a day with Brady and Belichick, and all they did was go win Super Bowls and kick people's tail week in and week out, year after year after year after year. I think it's a compliment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, being the villain means that you're the villain for a reason. You were successful. You're the team that everybody wants to beat. You're the team that no one wants to admit is that good. And I think that that's what the Bengals have become. You know, you see the people talking about Eli Apple on Twitter, people that have attacked him and stuff like that. Then he kind of trolls them back a little bit. And then, you know, when all of the stuff went down with the seeding, nobody really cared outside of Bengals fans that they got the short end of that stick. So, yeah, I'm good with being the villain. It's fine, especially on Twitter, as you talked about earlier. Bengals fans, a lot of the other fans tried to call us delusional, thought we were too confident, too cocky. And really it was just a belief in our team because we just watched this team from week to week, analyze them. We know how good they are. So I agree with you. Yeah, if you want to sign me up for being the Patriots, yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, how much hardware did they end up with?
Yeah, a lot. You know, look, at the end of the day, Ace, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the way we've watched this team this year, and we know the way it started out, the first 2 games, and then the way it's gone from there to only have lost 2 games since then, and they could have easily won one of those other 2 games, especially the Baltimore game. I mean, they got drilled against Cleveland, but that's Halloween night. This is just a really good Bengals team. I found the comments from Brendan Bean, the general manager of the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if you saw them or heard them. He came out and talked about at length yesterday. Yeah, he said the Bengals, it's sort of dismissively, yeah, the Bengals are a good team, but they're not facing the challenges that we face. They have Burrow, they have Chase on rookie contracts, which is true. They don't have Allen and Diggs on rookie contracts. And he said, they had to really stink to be able to get those two guys where they got them in the draft. But it just seems like, there are a lot of people, for whatever reason, just looking to take shots at this team when at the end of the day, this is a really good team. And there are a lot of people out there that really like watching this team, not just the Bengals, but football fans across the country.
Yeah, for sure. It's an exciting team to watch, and you have to give that credit to Duke Tobin and that front office. I mean, these guys, whether they were drafting in the 20s or in the top 10, they've always been great at drafting. I mean, you talk about Joe Mixon in the second round. There's countless guys. Cordell Volson this year in the later rounds, they get a starting guard that by some metrics, some people consider him an all-pro, all-rookie from the type of season that he's had. But it's really just something that the Bengals have always done well. They've always drafted well. This isn't something new. I mean, when you talk about A.J. Green, you talk about Andy Dalton, no matter how you feel about those guys, they were great draft picks. Carlos Dunlap, like for me, it's just kind of an excuse. Like, yeah, you don't want to be top five, but the Bengals have found plenty of talent outside of those guys. And the Bengals before that, they weren't drafting in the top five for majority of this decade and the past decade. So that was the first time with Joe Burrow that they'd had a number one overall pick since Carson Palmer. And then the top five pick with Chase. It's not like we're the Browns. It's not like we were picking multiple first-round picks and in the top five every year. Like, that's not what this team is. This team is very exciting. I think, like you said, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're some of the biggest guys that connect with the youth. You see all of these kids gritty, they're just a fun team to watch. I mean, T. Higgins, all of these weapons that they have, people love offense. Offense sells tickets, and the fact that they were able to get a lot of those guys from that 2020 national championship game, I think has a lot to do with it. But just a credit to Duke Tobin in that front office for having an exciting football team, which we always had in Cincinnati. It's always at least been exciting, right?
Yeah, that's right. Ace, I know you got meetings for your real job out there. When are you and your guy back at it on Cincinnati?
Yes, sir. We will be back tomorrow, Thursday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on the Cincinnati Pod. We are working on possibly having a surprise guest, so you'll be able to catch us there. Thank you again for having me. How about that?
Surprise. There you have it. Ace, thanks. We'll try and keep your guy calm down. We'll keep your guy. It's nice to have some sanity in the house for a change from the Cincinnati Pod. Ace, have a great day, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Ace Boogie. Like that guy.
He's awesome.
I can't remember because it's been so long. I can't remember the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Which one was the calm one and which one was the insane one? It's been so long. You guys know? You don't even know that.
You think we do literature?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. But, I mean, it's 1,000 years ago.
I did. I read that in freshman year of high school,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he is certainly the alter ego to Zim Hude, right? That's why they have a great podcast.
Yeah.
Great podcast. By the way, it was released a little while ago. Some may have seen it. CBS Sports, the final adjusted Nielsen data shows the Bengals-Bills divisional playoff game last Sunday averaged 39.32 million viewers for the mid-afternoon kickoff time. That made it the most watched AFC division round broadcast on record ever in the early window. Now, I have always said there was a time, in fact, it was 41 years ago. Is that what it was? Yesterday? When the Bengals lost to the 49ers in the Super Bowl. First time the Bengals went to the Super Bowl up in Pontiac, Michigan. There was a long time where that was the most watched Super Bowl in television sports history. Now, San Francisco is a big market. It wasn't as big back then as it is now. I mean, talking the early 80s, San Francisco had not really exploded. And Cincinnati is roughly about the same, maybe even a little bit less as far as a market size than it was back then. It's certainly less than it was as a market size back then. I have long disagreed with the thinking of a lot of television executives that you have to have these monster market teams to have high television ratings. Totally disagree with it. It's nice to have one of the two teams. Last year, you had the Rams, L.A., although, I don't know L.A.'s appetite for football. Nonetheless, L.A., and then you had Cincinnati being a top 32, 34 market, whatever it is. I think it has to do with the players, and I think it has to do with the storylines, right? I think if Buffalo would have made it, I think a lot of people would watch the whole Hamlin story, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Kansas City, they've got the big star quarterback. They've got a Hall of Fame tight end. They've got a Hall of Fame coach. They're going to be people who watch it. But nobody is more watchable right now than the Bengals. They have the star quarterback. They call him Joe Cool. They've got all the weapons. They've got a team that just plays with an intensity and a fire, and the coaching staff and the way they play, their style of play. I just think that if I was a TV executive, and I'm not, and I had rooting interest in this game, Fox has the Super Bowl, I would be rooting for the Bengals to win this game. I think they have more TV draw star power. Now, they don't have a Mahomes. I think Burrow's a better player than Mahomes. That's not what I mean. But Mahomes is a more household name. All the commercials, it seems like it never ends, right? Kelsey, certainly a bigger name right now than Jamar Chase. Right now. That's not going to last very long, but a bigger name. And Andy Reid is certainly 10 times a bigger name, if you're into coaches, than Zach Taylor. But I would want the Bengals in that Super Bowl if I was Fox.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And regardless of how you feel about the Chiefs team in general, whether you think they're good or not, I think people, if you were to do a poll, the consensus would be that they're tired of the Chiefs. Whereas the Bengals have just now kind of hit their stride, and they're just now getting into the limelight. And the majority of America, I think, would rather see the Bengals be successful than the Chiefs again. I think that's a reasonable and I think you could actually quantify it. I really do.
Well, look back at what happened with the Warriors in the NBA. The Warriors were a team that everybody loved in the very beginning because they changed the way we played basketball. They completely reinvented a sport that had been around for a century. They shot threes. They were exciting. They had a smaller lineup. They did things differently, and they won huge, and they were there every year. And then all of a sudden, they kept winning, and it was the same thing. It was always the Warriors in the finals. And everybody got sick of them.
Yep.
Everybody got tired of Draymond Green. Everybody got tired of the shtick. Everybody got tired of hearing about everything the Warriors were doing. And the Warriors went away for a couple of years. Now they're back. They win the title last year. And I think collectively a lot of people were rooting for the Warriors last year because it was fun again to watch them play after they had been back in the shadows for 2 or 3 years with Clay hurt and everybody else. I'm not saying that the Chiefs are going to go down and then rise back up. My point is there is just fatigue that you get when teams are constantly It's the Patriots, it's the Chiefs. You just get fatigued of seeing the same people and the same act and the same thing over and over. And the more that these players or coaches or whoever are exposed to the media and exposed to public opinion, the more that you get to know them, the more you might start to learn things or hear things from them that you might not like.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And I mean, I used to have this conversation, and look, I'm as guilty as falling into this trap as anybody. So call me a hypocrite. I think that you're spot on that. I think there were a lot of people in this country that got really turned off. You talk about another NBA team. I think there are a lot of people really turned off on Greg Popovich. They're tired of hearing him have an opinion on everything in the world. And he's allowed to have it. And Steve Kerr, the same thing. There are people that agree with a lot of things he has to say. There are a lot of people that don't agree with a lot of things he has to say. And I think after a while, you mix in the Draymond Green stuff. His act got tired in a hurry. I'll take him on my team all day, every day. Up until, let me correct that. I would have taken him on my team all day, every day, until he punches his teammate in the face. For me, his ass is out the door, right there and then. It goes to show you, right? Kerr's a hypocrite. It goes to show you that winning is everything.
But how much did the 90s Bulls do that and we just didn't see it because the practice tape didn't get?
Well, irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We never saw it. The point is we saw Draymond Green, and we've caught his act for a long, long time. All right? Yeah. And like I said, don't get me wrong. I would have taken him on my team all day, every day. I think you got to have those guys. You know, Rodman was that kind of guy. Enforcer, tough, little nasty. Nobody nastier in the old days than the Pistons, Lane Beer, and that whole crowd. You got to have one or two of those guys on your team if you want to be a good team in any sport, right? All these guys aren't choir boys. But you can't stop dropping teammates in the middle of practice. That can't happen. But Kerr looks the other way, spends him a few games, back he comes. Another title run. Here we go. But the Bengals have a little bit of that in them, right? I mean, before it was Vontez Burfict and Pac-Man Jones, right? When they had those good teams that could never win a playoff game. They cleared everybody out. Now they've got Apple. You know, he's become sort of the focal point of this whole thing. But then you got a lot of guys that aren't afraid to just lay it out there. Hayden Hurst, he'll just lay it out there. Joe Mixon lays it out there. Burrow in a different sort of way, but Burrow lays it out there.
He does.
Yeah.
He does.
We actually have a tweet right now. Pull it up, Casey. I'm glad that we're talking about this. Yeah, pull this one up. The NFL just tweeted this out. Listen to this. This is a mic'd up from Joe Burrow.
Pump fakes to the right. Now throws to the end zone. Caught by Hayden Hurst. Touchdown.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm him. That's Joe Burrow.
Hey, that's what you want the guy to think, right? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want a guy walking around, head down, you know, not thinking he's the man. You got to. What did Ric Flair used to say?
The wrestler.
Yeah, what did he used to say about the man? You want to be the man? What did he used to say?
Oh,
somebody in our chat knows.
Yeah. The 90s wrestling fans in the chat are gonna know.
I mean, you know, look.
Joe Burrow, Tom, where are we at on Joe Burrow here?
To be the man, you got to beat the man, says Sir Boy Wonder. That's right. And to be the man, Joe Burrow, he's got to beat the man. Patrick Mahomes, I don't care what he's done up to this point. For those people that get coming back to this stuff, 3-0, the last time I checked, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, the Bengals were behind in every one of those games. 2 of the 3 by double digits. 7 points this year with Kansas City on the move, and the strip by Pratt of Kelsey changed the whole game. So let's not act like this has been a tail kicking every time they've played. It hasn't been. You want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And right now, Mahomes is still the man.
Get the buzzer on that one.
Okay. Guy's only been to 5 straight AFC championship games every year as a starter.
Oh, well,
He's only been to 5 of them.
I
mean, you know, shame on him.
Give Joe Burrow.
He's only
5,
won a
6 years
Super Bowl and
he'll
been
go
to 2
6
of them.
straight.
Shame on him. As Ric Flair said, as we take this toss to the Ham and Eggers, you want to be the man? You got to beat the man. Ham and Eggers.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great, trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
Well,
Casey, what do you got for me today?
well, yesterday on Not Too Picky,
Yes.
I gave out my picks. And if you followed the Clippers Lakers, you actually won some money. Congrats, everyone, whoever watched that and followed that. However, last night, I was going back and forth between picking the Clippers and the Lakers. Back and forth, back and forth. I was like, man, I was looking at our system, and it was screaming Clippers, 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 Clippers. But it had been doing a little rough as of late. And I was like,
the system. And
I was like, I'm gonna take LeBron on this one. And
his points smacked.
His points smacked. That was great. He had over 30, right?
He had 40. He had 47, maybe 46.
It was the last. I hadn't looked at the box score. I just saw that.
Yeah. So I watched because I had Kawhi over 20 points as the last leg of a parlay that I had, and that hit. That's scary because he had, I think, 12 or 14 at halftime. I think he had 14 at halftime. Kawhi did, and it was the last leg of a parlay that we needed. I think you were on this parlay too, right?
I think so.
The 4-legger. Maybe not.
I don't know.
The calling our shot one, the ladder challenge one.
No, I was
no, you
not
weren't.
on
Okay.
that.
So it was the last leg of a 4-leg parlay. Kawhi had 14 at halftime, but the Clippers were up by like 20 something, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, was the NBA? If they go up by 35, he's going to sit the fourth quarter. So we need this. So he gets to 18. I needed over 19 and a half. He gets to 18, and then they separated themselves. And I'm going, oh, my God. Like, is he going to sit this out? No, he didn't sit out because, thank God, LeBron took off in the fourth quarter. They got it back to, I think, like 10 or 11. I think it was the last team in the NBA that LeBron had not scored 40 points against. He scored 40 at least, I think 46 or 47 last night. He has now scored 40 points against every team in the NBA. It's incredible.
Yeah,
and he's closing in on the NBA scoring record too. Yeah. I know, Tom. We don't talk a ton of NBA with Tom around here, so I guess the Ham and Eggers segment is our college basketball and NBA segment of the show.
Well, we're going to talk more about the NBA when football's done and college basketball, but yeah, man, I stupidly picked the Lakers in that parlay, so I lost out, but I'm hoping the people that watch, not too picky, we didn't post it on the Discord like we said we were going to. If you just took that parlay, you're up. So congrats if you did take it. If not, I'm sorry. And I also have to give a special apology to Nathan Hines, who I gave the Lakers in that parlay too, because he asked for that parlay and I sent him what I put down. So
Clippers rolled, Nathan.
Clippers
I'm so sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, I really am. I gotta give him $10.
Tom, it's a snow day today, so my girlfriend's in the chat. She was the one that convinced me to get this haircut, and Lizzie's in the chat today on a snow day from teaching the kids.
You know, I got to tell you.
Here we go.
It's so funny you bring this up. Now, it's my understanding our superintendent, who does a phenomenal job, is out of town this week. He's at some conference, okay? And he's the guy that makes the call about snow days. I don't know how it works. She's at CPS, is that right?
No. She teaches at a small Catholic school over on the west side.
Well, I should. How did I not know that? But seriously, now it's different for the rural schools, okay, where kids are traveling from miles and miles on county roads. I always think of kids that I see when I'm on the highway and kids on school buses. I never grew up like that. Most of you did not grow up like that. And so when you have weather situations like we've had, I get it. But then there are other situations, like where our kids go to school. Half the kids walk there. Half might be a stretch. Let's say a third. The other 2/3 are less than 2 miles away. It's a public school, okay? Less than 2 miles away. School was called off last night at 9 o'clock. I was at a high school basketball game. Marymount played at St. X last night.
How'd they do?
Not well. I mean, we're not supposed to do well. They hung in there for 3 quarters and got hammered.
Okay.
Which I'm going to get back to that in a second, too. But I mean, I get up this morning and I say, okay, because we weren't sure if we were coming in, depending on how the weather went. We were going to do the show remotely. And I look out the window, and the street outside of just being wet, right, is, I mean, you can see the black top from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
North, south, east, west. There it is. Nothing on and I'm like, okay, shower up, shave, let's get ready to drive up to Hamilton. And I'm thinking to myself, you have got to be kidding me. All of these school districts called off last night at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in some cases. Not rural schools. We're talking about public schools where a lot of the kids are right in the hood. I mean, what the hell is going on around here?
Well, look, Tom, isn't
Seriously.
it? Well, come on.
I mean, seriously. Most of the people watching this show grew up in an area that gets snow like we live in, or they grew up right here in Cincinnati. Can you ever remember getting a snow day like this today?
But sometimes
it didn't snow.
Sometimes you just need an off day.
Well, I'm good by that. I got no problem with that. I'm okay by that. But I mean, come on.
Sometimes you just, the snow's in the forecast. The school districts haven't used snow days yet this year. Chalk it up. Give the kids a day off. You know what's BS? I'm going to say this. You know what's total BS? There's two things that are BS. One is that these kids these days don't get to see the schools.
Now you're dropping these kids.
Well, they don't get to see the little, the NFL draft ticker at the bottom of their schools. Yeah. They don't have to sit there and wait on the local news. That's just sad that these kids don't get that experience. And two, these kids also, because of COVID, something that COVID really screwed up for this generation of primary and grade school kids, is that now on snow days, these poor kids have e-learning days. Oh. So where you think that you're going to go out and make snowmen all day, your school district or your school, wherever you go, might give you an e-learning day, and you got to sit there behind a screen or listen to your teacher. No, the teachers don't want to teach. Give the teachers a day off too. Give everybody a day off. It's a snow day. It's national holiday.
I'm with you 1,000%.
Well, come on.
If you're going to get the day off, get the day off, right?
Yeah.
Get the day off. Teachers included.
Yes.
Right.
Teachers deserve a day off. Teachers dealing with these munchkins all day long.
No doubt
about it.
Give
them a day off.
I am with you all the way. A day off should be a day off, end of story. I want to circle back real quick to this basketball game last night. Okay, now I go to a lot of high school sports. Both of my kids play high school sports, multiple high school sports. And I love the sport of basketball. But I got to tell you, and look, I know, I think I was counting up on the board. It really is amazing. St. Xavier High School. Now, 36 of the 70, was it 36? Trying to remember as I'm looking at the banners last night. Over half of the state championships won in all sports by St. Xavier. Over half are in swimming, where they are the powerhouse swimming program in the United States of America. Not even close. There is nowhere in the United States even close to the swimming program they have at St. Xavier. And they're great in everything. I mean, they really are. It's amazing. They've won, I think I counted, if I did it right, I think, because there were a lot to count. I think they had 70 state championships, 36 of the 70, barely over half, were in swimming. But when the teams lined up at roughly the free throw line on their respective ends of the floor for the national anthem, and at St. X games, which I love, they say a prayer before the game. I think it's fantastic. You're not offending anybody. When they play the national anthem and the kids are lined up on the St. X team, and then they go into the starting lineups, and they say, and the head coach is assisted by St. Xavier's basketball team, which is by far and away their worst sport of all the sports they have at that school. That is the least successful sport that they have is basketball. They can't beat Elder, and they can't beat Moeller. Right? Now, you've had years here and there, but I mean, it's by far, compared to swimming, compared to lacrosse, compared to any number of other sports they have over there. Okay? Football. They have 7 assistant coaches for the basketball team. 7 assistant coaches under the head coach of the basketball team. They damn near have an assistant coach for almost every player that is sitting on the bench once the 5 who are in the game are out on the floor.
Some of them have.
There's your hard-earned tuition money. Yikes. Going to 7 assistant coaches and a head coach.
Do some of them have a different?
Now, if you had them in football, they probably have. If they have 7 in basketball, Steve Speck must have 15 assistant coaches minimum of the football program. I couldn't believe it. I mean, God bless them. Good for them. I just couldn't believe it. I have not been to a high school basketball game, Moeller included. Moeller doesn't have 7 assistant coaches. I've never seen anything like it.
Here's what I'll say. I was a play-by-play broadcaster for Covcath for a few years ago while I was at Xavier. And what they would do, what Scott Rusatz would do down there is they, I guess, announced them as assistant coaches, but like he would have the freshman coach and the JV coaches sit on the varsity bench.
Of course, every school does.
But they would announce them as assistants. Was it one of those situations?
Well, I mean, I can't speak. I have no doubt that that's true. But the point I'm making is every other school that I go see play. Now, most of them are in Division III, Division IV, Division V, rather than D1. But that's the same with everything. So, like the Marymount coach last night, David Caldwell, he's got himself. He's got an assistant for the varsity. He has a JV head coach, and then he has the freshman head coach, right?
Yeah.
Because they play boom, 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 back to back to back. And so you have a total of 4. St. X had 8, including the head coach. 8. I couldn't believe it.
Well, think about how much sports have changed. I mean, just in the last 20, 30 years. Think back like to the Bengals, or forget the Bengals, any NFL team. The first time you got your first 300-pound offensive lineman, right? And now it's just become that's light on the standard, and how things have evolved now in sports and specializing in sports even down to the youth level and all this training and everything else that all these sports have now zeroed in on. And I guess that's another step in it.
I tell you, it is amazing because, at a school like Marymount or a school like Wyoming or some of these schools that all play in the CHL, Cincinnati Hills League, you don't see it because of just the sheer numbers. St. X had 5 guys on that team last night, but 3 in particular that I guess are unbelievable football players. These guys are all sophomores. And they were minimum 6'5", 230. One of them is the son of Alex Solstad. He was a great player at Miami of Ohio and then played in the NFL as a backup offensive lineman for the Bengals for many, many years. His son is only a sophomore, and I guess he's one of the best football players in the state, going to be recruited by everybody. To watch this young man run around on the court last night, as big as he is, and I just couldn't believe it, how big these guys are. And to run around with the athleticism that they run around with is just mind-boggling. Okay. Couple of things I want to get to since we're on the topic of basketball, Paul. A very big game for your Xavier Musketeers tonight. They are taking on UConn. The Muskies are ranked 13th. UConn is ranked 19th. Yep. They played earlier this year, not too long ago, at Cintas in a game won by Xavier. I believe it was 83-73. Yep. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep. Yeah, 10-point win.
How in the world, explain this to me, other than any other reason than the reason I gave you 2 days ago when we argued like madmen? How in the world, on the matchup predictor, would UConn have an 82.3% chance to win and Xavier be at 17.7% chance to win, besides the fact that one team is at home?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think home court advantage is a big deal in college, as we know, and especially playing at Gamble, which is a much smaller, more intimate setting than some other facilities. But if you remember back to that game against Connecticut on New Year's Eve, that game was tied at 71 with less than 4 minutes to go in the game. That was a close, back-and-forth game that Xavier ended up winning by 10. So if you're just looking at the box score and you just see the final score, you're thinking, oh, Xavier blew them out. They won by double digits. And I would argue that Xavier did have control of that game for the entire game. UConn was not efficient. They made 13 threes in that game, but they were 13 for 37. And I don't really get – I know that Trace and Reed would probably sit out there and look at the betting numbers of this and say that this might be a square pick to pick Xavier in this game. But just looking at it from a basketball perspective, UConn is one of the best matchups in the Big East for Xavier because they don't have a true point guard. And Xavier has really, really struggled this year guarding opposing point guards at a massive level. It's a huge flaw in Xavier's defense right now is how they've been able to defend against opposing point guards, or not defend it in that case. And UConn doesn't have one this year. They had R.J. Cole the last few years, who is phenomenal. They don't have that this year. They don't have that guy that the offense flows through like Xavier does in Sule Boom. Now, what they do have is two massive big guys, and Adama Sanogo, who was trending to be a Player of the Year type candidate until UConn fell off, and then Donovan Kling, and a new guy for UConn this year, who's really emerged. So as far as the bigs go, Jack Nunge, Zach Fremantle, that's where you're going to have to focus your effort. But to what you were saying, Tom, yes, home court obviously does play a huge factor in college. But the other thing is, this is a game where UConn did not shoot well in the first matchup between these teams. They have regressed significantly over the last few weeks. They're coming off a 30-point win over Butler, but that doesn't really mean anything because Butler has been terrible this year. So if you're Xavier, now you go on the road, and if UConn hits their shots, I don't think that this is going to be I don't really know where the 8-point spread is coming from. I shouldn't say that. I know where it's coming from because it's coming from the predictive computer models of this game, saying it's an 8-point game, and then that's where Vegas draws their line from. But it's already been bet down to 6.5. So I don't know. I still see this more as a 3 or 4 point game. I don't want to say I'd be shocked if Xavier won this game, but I would be pleasantly surprised if Xavier won this game.
You know, you look inside some of the numbers for this game, and we talked about it the other day. Sean Miller was not happy at all with his team's defense, even in the win over Georgetown, where they gave up 82, they scored 95. Defense is the one significant difference, basically the only significant difference when you look inside the numbers with these two teams. Their rebounds per game, a wash. Assists per game, little Xavier, a little bit better. But Xavier scores 84 a game, gives up 75. UConn scores 80 a game, gives up 63. Yeah. My question for you is this. Is Xavier going to have a hard time winning in the tournament because of their lack of defense? We're a long ways off from the tournament, so there are a lot of things that Sean Miller can do, and we are huge fans of Sean Miller as a coach on this program. And he's a great coach. There's no debate about it. But when you're allowing 75, can you count on neutral floor? Can you count on scoring 75 or more against better competition? Good competition.
I think so. I think we have a big enough sample size now that was the narrative earlier in the season about this team and whether they could do that. I think we have a big enough sample size with the offense right now that we know 18 games into this season, 19 games, however many games, I think 19 games into the season, that we know, okay, hey, they've done it enough that now being the, I think, 5th best offensive team in the country is what 7th best right now offensive team in the country. You know, I think they can. Xavier has played 3 neutral court games already this season. One of them offensively did not go well, but 2 of them they played very well offensively. And again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I do think that there's enough that we've seen from Xavier to be able to get that. And Dayton plays tonight too. I know we have some Dayton fans in the chat. Dayton plays tonight as well, Tom. Dayton suffered a couple of really, really bad losses in the last 3 games. They lost to VCU at home in a game they completely choked away. That was a game that Dayton should have never lost. They were winning that game significantly, going down to the final 3 minutes, lost that game by 1 at home, and then lost by 7 against a terrible George Washington team over the weekend on Saturday. They've lost 2 out of 3. If Dayton wanted to make the NCAA tournament with an at-large bid, they were going to have to go undefeated in the A-10, and I'm not even sure that would have gotten them there, but they would have at least put themselves in a position to think about it. But now they're going to have to win the A-10 tournament. Cincinnati, without a win against Memphis, they're probably going to need to win the A-10. Not probably. They will need to win the AAC. Kentucky is playing their way back into the tournament. They were way down and out. They're playing their way back in right now. They had a good win against Vanderbilt, but Kentucky's got to play Kansas this weekend, and those are 2 really desperate teams. I know we probably won't spend a ton of time on that game because of the AFC Championship, obviously, but Kentucky and Kansas this weekend is a matchup of 2 desperate teams that needed a big win, and it's at Rupp, which is obviously good for Kentucky. So as far as the local teams go, that's kind of the state of the union on how things are going right now.
We have a newcomer to the chat, Cindy J. Now, Cindy, she writes in, I'm a proud St. X mom and donor. I have no problem with how St. X distributes their funds. My sons received a world-class education with several sports and extracurriculars to participate in. I'm with you, Cindy. I'm not I didn't badmouth St. X. I just made an observation. It was just an observation, one which I have never seen in high school athletics. A high school basketball team with 8 coaches. I've never seen it.
My dad just texted me about St. X swimming. My dad was a very high-level swimming coach back in the day, and he would travel all over the country to watch swimming in the Cincinnati Marlins and St. X.
Yeah.
And he just texted me that he enjoyed the segment talking St. X swimming, the Aqua Bombers.
Well, I don't talk much about him. You know, I mean, I never paid any attention to it. My kids weren't swimmers, and God bless those that are. One of my dearest friends in the world, his son, local swimmer here in town, was at St. X, came back to his public high school, and he is one of the top 5 teenage swimmers in the United States of America. He just went down to Greensboro for the big national meet, finished second down there in 2 or 3 events. I mean, he's a potential Olympian. So I have some interest, although very small. But my wife grew up with a woman who went to Stanford on a swimming scholarship. And we were living out in Arizona. And so we would get invited to all of these weddings of all these Stanford swimmers, including Jenny Thompson, you know, multi-gold medalist and all this kind of thing. And I remember the first wedding of those that I went to, I had met one of the women who was a Stanford swimmer, and my wife and I were there, and she says to me, what in the world, literally and figuratively, is in the water in Cincinnati? And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, half the Stanford swim team is from St. Xavier High School. Seems like every year, half the team, a third of the team, 2 or 3 members of the team, all come out of that one high school. And then when you look at their track record, it's just insane. So, Cindy, there was no judgment there about the whole thing. It was an observation. That's it. Boys, I want to get into a couple of things. I want to start with the Brendan Bean stuff from yesterday. That's the general manager of the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
Okay. Almost passive. Almost, it hurt him to say it, and I could understand if it hurt him to say it because your team just lost to the Bengals. But he did say they have a really good team, but ... He said they're in a very different situation than we're in Buffalo, and they're going to have to pay the piper just like we are right now. And what he meant was, he said they were really bad and had some bad years to get into a position where they were able to take Joe Burrow, number 1 in the draft, and then a year later take Jamar Chase with a top 5 pick in the draft. He said, so I wouldn't want to be that bad to take picks like that. Now, let me ask any sane person out there, because there are multiple topics I want to split this up into. If you were to go to virtually any NFL team fan base and you said to them, all right, here's the deal. You're going to have a couple of years where you're 4-12, right? You're 3-13 in back-to-back years. So you got to suffer through that. But we're telling you ahead of time, and there was no guarantee then when the Bengals were taking Burrow and Chase that it would turn out that way. You thought it would, but no guarantee. But we're guaranteeing you that you're going to get Joe Burrow and take Jamar Chase. Now, Paul, you did not grow up in Cincinnati. You grew up outside of Cincinnati.
Yep.
If you were the fan of fill in the blank, were you a Washington football Wizards fan?
No, I've always been a Bengals fan.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you think it's safe to say that most people in that fan base, better than 50% of them, would say, sign me up for the back-to-back bad years, knowing what's coming behind it?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, as somebody that is very in tune with the misery that the Washington Commanders and their fans go through every single year because of Dan Snyder, every single one of them would sign up for a franchise-changing player yesterday. Every one of them. Doesn't matter. They're so bad. They've had so much misery forever. They've never been relevant in my lifetime.
Yep.
They had a good year or two with RG3, but he got hurt because you're playing on a bad field in a terrible stadium. Every one of them, if you said, hey, have a little bit of a worse year than you already do, and, oh, by the way, you can go get Jamar Chase, yeah, where do I sign?
Okay.
Immediately.
And an even better point than the one I'm bringing up was raised by Emperor. He says, how about the Dallas Cowboys? As bad as they were, right? Before Jerry bought the team. He said the Cowboys picked Aikman, Smith, and Irvin. And they proceeded to win 3 of the next 4 Super Bowls. The Bengals are on the verge of playing their second straight Super Bowl. Still haven't won one yet. So you start with those comments made by the Bills general manager. But I will say this. He brings up a very interesting dilemma here that is going to be facing the Bengals. A lot of people don't want to talk about this yet because they've got the game this weekend. I get it. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But it is a viable point. His point was, we're paying Brandon Allen, Josh Allen, a ton of money. No longer on the rookie deal like Burrow is. We're paying Stephon Diggs a ton of money after making the trade with Minnesota, which, Casey, by the way, as you pointed out, when they made that trade, the pick that was sent to Minnesota was Justin Jefferson.
Right. Yeah, they almost had the exact same situation that the Bengals found themselves in. And I think it's a terrible argument that they had, in order to get good players, that they have to have sucky seasons when Josh Allen was picked 7th overall. You got Josh Allen the exact same way by sucking that you had an opportunity to get a pretty high draft pick.
Well, he was saying both of them. They were both top 5. One was number 1. There's a big difference between number 7 and number 1.
I agree with that.
All right, so they had 2 top 5 picks in back-to-back years. It's a viable point. I get what you're saying about Allen, 7th pick. So they had to have a pretty bad year to get in that spot. But the Jefferson pick was what, 17, 18, something like that?
The Justin Jefferson pick was, let me check.
Okay. Well, here's the point I'm making. And ultimately the most important part of this. There is a legitimate point to what he is raising with what they're having to pay guys. And for Buffalo, by the way, it's only going to get worse. Because when they structured this deal for Josh Allen, this year he was the 13th highest paid quarterback in the league. Next year he becomes the 4th highest paid quarterback in the league. Huge jump salary-wise. And what it counts against a salary cap. Okay? Same thing with Diggs. He's making a huge leap for this upcoming season, next season, from what he made this season. You can't keep them all. And there are restraints on organizations if indeed Joe Burrow, and we all agree, okay? Everybody says pay Burrow, and nobody's arguing that point, not for a sliver of a second. But the second that contract, the ink is not even dry. And the same thing with Higgins if you tag him, which they can do at the end of the year. Who's finishing his rookie deal? Chase if you pay him. It begins to hamstring the franchise on who you can keep and who you just have to simply let go.
I still think it's a terrible argument because there's plenty of opportunity to get other players within the draft regardless of where you're at. Look at DK Metcalf. He fell to the second round, pick 64. The Bills had a chance to get a number one receiver at any point.
Well, it says here, Jared says here that Jefferson was the fifth pick in the draft. Is that right?
No.
Fifth pick? No.
Justin Jefferson was 20.
He was 20
He's
or
20th pick in the draft. Come
He's
on,
22.
Jared.
He's
Come
22.
on, Jared.
Josh Allen was pick 7, if that's what he's talking about.
No. He probably, you know what he probably means?
Oh, fifth,
Yeah.
Jared, fifth receiver selected.
Yeah.
So there were other guys that were there. And
Right.
Jefferson sitting there. That was the same year as you pointed out that Higgins goes in the second round, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I'm just saying, like, that is a terrible, terrible argument because you have to scout. You have to, make the right decision at that pick. The Bengals could have easily gone for Penei Sewell at pick 5. They could have easily whiffed on Joe Burrow. Like, he could have been a bust. Like, it's that to me making it seem like they automatically got those players because they sucked is dumb to me because there's 100% chance that Jamar Chase was a bust or Joe Burrow was a bust. Look how many first top 5 picks are a bust in the NFL in general. It's not about where you're picking. It's about scouting talent and building a roster. And they just built a roster a little bit sooner than the Bengals. You can't fault them for getting Josh Allen in 2018 and we got Joe Burrow in 2020. Like, we're just in different time slots. But they had a chance. They had their window, right? They had 2 years back-to-back picking Josh Allen, and then they had another top 10 pick. They had an easy window for them to do the exact same thing the Bengals did. But they just missed it. And it's not our fault that they have a salary cap that's now strapped because they went ahead and traded for Stephon Diggs when they could have had Justin Jefferson on a rookie deal.
Okay, but there is a difference between having 2 top 5 picks compared to a number 7 pick and then
Number
theoretically
9.
what would have been, I'm going to call Diggs a number 1 pick because you were getting a number 1 pick when you traded for him. He was like getting a first-round pick. High first-round pick. Highly productive player, just like that. But the salary part is a big deal.
Right.
I mean, there are going to be a lot of hurt feelings around Cincinnati in the next 2 years about what guys that this fan base has latched onto that are walking straight out the door. It's going to happen. You can mark it down. You can't pay a guy $500 million. That's one guy. You can't pay one guy $400, $500 million and not take hits somewhere else. And I think that's the only point he's making. They had to give Allen a contract, and they did, and every team would. And now you got to pay the piper if you're the Bengals moving forward, so enjoy it while it lasts. Hey, can you send my dad a link? I didn't think he was going to be on today. And did you get the pictures, Casey, by the way?
Oh, I did. I'm going to put him on now that he's coming on the show. I'll get him on.
I didn't think he was going to be on today. He was supposed to be going some highfalutin tour that only, big leaguers get to go on.
For people listening that have been listening to Marty the last couple of weeks, the picture that Marty sent Casey, that we're going to flash up on the screen from Disneyland, is just it's unreal. I know that's a tease, but man, is it good.
This is a great point made by Purchasing GSS. Said if you don't believe it about paying the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, how many number one receivers has he had the last 4 years? Devontae Adams, bye-bye. You can't name a receiver on that team.
Bring back Randall Cobb.
They did.
No, they did.
They did.
I mean, I just think it's
Jesse Bates is walking out the door at the end of this year. You can book that. Now, some might say, well, big deal. And maybe you're right. I don't know.
I just feel like it's a
and they drafted
argument.
a guy to try and take his place. So that's where the Bengals have been extraordinary. Paul Painter wants to ring the banana phone.
We got to get that going.
All right, well, let me know when he is on.
I will let you know.
Because he may not be looking for it, though. Let me just say, we sent it. Because I want to ask him about this Hall of Fame thing. Because my dad loved Scott Rowland. Anybody that ever spent 10 minutes around Scott Rowland loved Scott Rowland. I mean, he is an awesome dude. We're not going to put it up there, but there was a video that somebody in his family took in their kitchen last night when he had walked back in the other room to take the phone call to receive word that he was elected to the Hall of Fame. And he walked back in the kitchen, and that's where this video starts, of him telling his mom and dad that he had made the Hall of Fame. His dad's in a walker. Looks like he's sharp as can be, just having a hard time getting around. Mom's bouncing all over the place. That normally tends to be the case. The moms are bouncing everywhere, and the dads are broke down like the rest of us. But it's you think back, the first thing I think of when I see something like that is how many games over there in Indiana where he's from and still makes his home, how many games mom and dad were driving him around. He was Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana. Now, when you're Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana, you're a Mr. Basketball, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's big league basketball. But you think about all the times driving around, and I just think even with our kids, driving around, going all over the country for sports teams our son has played for and been a part of. And you wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And to be standing and hugging your son and or daughter, whatever it might be, when you get that kind of phone call, it is an awesome, awesome video. Brian says, I like Rowland a lot, but nearly every player that was voted on yesterday deserved to be in over him. There were very, very interesting comments made by Jeff Kent yesterday. I'm going to have to see if I can find these. Kent sent out basically to the Giants PR. He said, the voting over the years has been too much of a head-scratching embarrassment. Baseball is losing a couple of generations of great players that were the best in their era because a couple of non-voting stat folks keep comparing those players to players already voted in and from generations past and are influencing the votes. It's unfair to the best players in their own era and those already voted in my opinion. It should be noted that many of Kent, outside of defense, his metrics, even in this analytics world we live in, are highly, highly favorable. But to think, and the best example given yesterday, and I think what Kent is saying is this. For Bill Mazeroski to be in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, for Bill Mazeroski as a second baseman during his career to be in the Hall of Fame, and for Jeff Kent not to be in the Hall of Fame is a complete and utter embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. Just go look at the numbers. Don't tell me about WAR. Don't tell me about, just go look at the numbers. Hits, home runs, doubles, runs scored, runs batted in, okay? I don't want to hear about the defensive metrics on Jeff Kent. I don't want to hear about him. Now, defense can help you get in, but defense should not be a hindrance for you getting in when you put up the kind of offensive numbers that Kent and others put up. I mean, if you want to argue metrics on defense as well as offense, how did Andrew Jones not get in yesterday? There wasn't a better defensive outfielder. He was a center fielder. He was the best defensive center fielder in Major League Baseball for over a decade. He hit 30, 35 home runs every single year like falling out of bed. And then there's Todd Helton. Let me know if and when my dad shows up. I don't know if he will or not.
Just to let you know, I think Vach asked for a link, so I sent him
Okay,
a link.
then we'll get to him too. But if my dad comes on, we got to get him on.
Yeah, we'll get him on.
Absolutely.
So, but where was I? If you're a player ever drafted by the Colorado Rockies, you should just tell yourself ahead of time, based on what we see from the voters, just tell yourself ahead of time you're not getting in a Hall of Fame. It's another area where these guys are penalized because they just happen to get drafted, as Helton did out of the University of Tennessee, and he gets drafted by the Colorado Rockies, and he plays at mile-high altitude. It is a joke. It is a joke. It's an embarrassment that he's not in the Hall of Fame. Now, he might get in sooner or later. He was right there. He was only at 72%. You got to get 75%. But he didn't get in. I just don't understand who these guys are. I'm going to try to get, I'm assuming that C. Trent Rosecrans from the Athletic votes. And bear in mind now, okay, here's the deal. And here's the kicker. All right? These writers are sent out a list of players. Let's say there's 50 of them. Bronson Arroyo got a vote yesterday. Okay? Now, great career, not a Hall of Famer. He knows it. You know it. I know it. Okay? But somebody put him in. When I say put him in, when you get this list of, say, 100 guys, 50 guys, whatever it is, okay? What it means is, for each of these guys, is that you're able to list 10 guys, okay? So that means that 55%, using Jeff Kent as an example, he got 46% of the vote. So that means that 54% of the guys that voted for the Hall of Fame did not put Jeff Kent in their top 10. Because to get part of the percentage, you only got to be through 1 through 10. You don't get like 5th place votes, 4th place votes, 3rd place votes, all that kind of thing. You just got to be listed in the top 10. So who in the hell are these guys that are voting? Right? Who are they? That means 25% did not put Roland in their top 10. Who did they put in the top 10? All right.
We got, hold on just a second.
Okay.
Hold on just a second.
Can you apologize to Vach for me and ask him if we can do this with him tomorrow? Yeah. Can we do that? Because that's my fault. I reached out to him this morning. He was kind enough to jump on, and I didn't think we were getting my dad on. And this is the Hall of Fame stuff is something that certainly is topical. Dad, before we go any further, I know you were a big fan, and I think it's safe to say that anybody who spent 10 minutes around Scott Rowland was a big fan of Scott Rowland, and everybody who's ever been around him has to be absolutely elated that he got that phone call, the narrowest of margins, but he's in.
Well, it made my day, Tom. I really was very, very dubious about whether or not Scott was going to get enough votes in order to be a new inductee. And I'm thrilled to death that there are other people that recognize what a tremendous talent he was, not only as a player on the field, but what he did in the clubhouse. He's one of the greatest leaders that I've ever seen in a baseball uniform. And I'm just thrilled beyond words that the guy is going to be inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame, as he should be.
Dad, listen, I don't want to take anything away from Scott Rowland, but I mean, I am so worked up over a guy that I said on record I didn't even like as a guy. We had clashes all the time. Listen, we sat here yesterday, and I am in no form or fashion, when Tracy Jones was with us yesterday, I am in no form or fashion comparing Jeff Kent to Joe Morgan. But when you look at the offensive numbers that Kent put up in over 2,000 fewer at-bats, it is mind-boggling the difference outside of stolen bases. I'm not making the comparison between the two. But, Dad, you know as well as I do how this thing works. You're given a list of people that are eligible for the Hall of Fame. For them to get a percentage, all you got to do is put them in your top 10. Of the guys that are eligible, they have to be on your top 10. You mean to tell me that Jeff Kent, of the top 10, these guys that are voting, 55% of them don't put him in the top 10 for this year? Who is voting on this?
You know who's voting on it. The Baseball Writers Association of America are the guys that vote on this. And a lot of those guys, I bet you they don't see 15 games a year, if that many. And the argument that I've made for the last 35 years, or maybe more than that, is the people who see more baseball than they do are more qualified to vote than most of them. Now, I'm not talking about all of them. Trent Rosecrans is a voting member, and Trent goes to the ballpark religiously. He sees a lot of baseball over the course of the year. But a lot of these members of that association don't see hardly any games at all. And yet they are one of two or three or four, however many of them, of the many who are sent out ballots because they are members and they're qualified to vote, in their opinion. The guys that see more baseball are the guys that broadcast the games, and they will not let us in. For whatever the reason, they won't allow us to be a part of the voting process. For whatever the reason, I'd love to know, but I've made this argument for years and years and years. We are more qualified as a group than the goodly number of guys that see 5, 10, 12 games a year, and yet they're voting on whether a guy should be in the Hall of Fame or not. Jeff Kent, and I've said for the last however many years, is the guy who should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame without any question. And I think a lot of guys that vote have personal feelings about certain players because they were rude to them, or they refused to give them an interview, or whatever the case might be. So that plays in, I think, to some of the approaches that some of these guys take. I think you need to judge a player based on what his on-field capabilities were. Obviously, if there's scandal involved in the guy's life while he's playing, that certainly is a factor. But my personal feelings, if I would never have a personal feeling enter into my decision as to whether or not a guy should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I really believe that in some cases that exists because Jeff Kent was not a very nice guy. Very few people liked him, including teammates. But as far as what he did as a player, his numbers certainly deserve to be there without any question whatsoever.
I just don't get, Dad, just like I don't get the thing about no player ever has been a unanimous selection for the Hall of Fame. This is absolute and utter ego. It's out of control ego for these guys or writers that are doing this stuff. Because I don't care if you're talking about Ken Griffey Jr., Thom Seaver, Johnny Bench, whoever it might. These are some of the highest percentage vote getters. They're in the very high 90s, but nobody 100%. Derek Jeter. That means, again, now, someone just wrote in the chat, there were only 28 guys because of the way they're whittling guys off the list. So you had 28 names, guys like Tim Wakefield and Bronson Arroyo, okay? Good careers. Arroyo had a great career. But it means that of the 28 you're voting on any given year, so that means that at least 1 or 2% of those guys, when they're voting for Ken Griffey Jr. or Johnny Bench, 1 or 2% of those guys are not even putting that player in their top 10 on that given year. I mean, you rub elbows with all these big wigs and highfalutin sorts at the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Do you ever hear anybody talk about changing this on who's able to vote?
I've never heard any inkling whatsoever of the possibility that they could change the way things have been since day one, I would imagine. I think that it needs to be looked at. But you see, the thing that a lot of people don't understand, Tom, the Baseball Hall of Fame has nothing to do, to my way of thinking, what little knowledge I have, with what the baseball writers do and how they go about doing it. Now, I think that, if they're not happy with the process, they could certainly voice their opinion, and maybe that would have something to do with maybe starting the ball rolling toward getting the process changed. But I've never heard any conversation whatsoever about, this whole thing has got to be reworked and rechanged to make it a bit more acceptable. What they need to do, and for whatever the reason they're scared to do, is to make everybody's vote public. I saw Thom Hardricourt, the former Milwaukee beat writer, who is now retired, and Thom is a member of the voting group, and he took a picture of his ballot and sent it in, and at the bottom of every ballot they said, we have the permission to release the results of your ballot. I don't know how many days after the announcement is made, and they 2 boxes at the bottom of that sentence, yes or no. And Thom typed, yes, you can release my voting public when the time comes. They should make that mandatory, because I think a lot of guys hide behind that. They don't put somebody who clearly deserves to be in the top 10 and maybe clearly deserves to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and they vote no for whatever the reason, but they don't want that released. And I think if you make these guys say, okay, guys, we're going to release every one of them. This is a new rule. Everybody's vote is going to be made public. Then we'll see how things work out, because these guys hide behind anonymity in a minute if they got a chance. And this is the biggest chance that they have in wielding some measure of power in determining who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and know that they're not going to have to answer the question of why they didn't vote for so-and-so.
All right, more importantly, the most important topic of the day, the pictures your bride Amanda sent to us. We had asked and requested that upon your visit to Disneyland in California, which you're a big fan of, much bigger fan of Disneyland, and we said, how about Marty? Everybody, here you go. Well, he's got him on there now, but take a look at this picture. This is like the kind of thing that should be on the cover of Walt Disney World magazine, if there is such a thing. I mean, take a look at that. Then from behind, with the Magic Kingdom, the castle itself, Cinderella's castle in the background. And we wondered about the teacup.
My name on the back
still have it going on. There you have it.
That's right.
You got the teacup.
Never let it be said that when you guys ask me to do something, I go the extra mile to entertain those people who watch your show. And so, to do what we did, what you didn't mention was when you took that shot from behind, is my name is on the back of that Mickey Mouse hat in script.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
I was so mesmerized by just that shot. What's a famous photographer? Annie Leibovitz? Is that who that is?
Sure.
That looks like something you don't know.
Annie showed up to take this picture because it was for the podcast. Correct. Yes.
I mean, our chat is blowing up. They cannot believe it. Someone wants to know if you'll save that money from going to the Magic Kingdom and buy the Reds. Let me ask you this. Did you ride on the teacup ride? Because that's one of those deals where, it spins around, then around, then around. You don't want to take the kids on it right after they've eaten or something like that. Did you ride that ride?
No, we did not. I don't even know if they have it. They do. That was just a replica that we climbed in for picture-taking purposes. But believe me when I tell you that I've been on some hair-raising rides out here, pal. Believe me.
Really? Like what?
Yes.
Big Thunder Mountain.
Thunder Mountain, the Thunder Mountain Railroad, which is a roller coaster.
The Matterhorn.
The Matterhorn, which is and it's like a bobsled.
Tower Terror of the Drop. The Guardians of the Galaxy.
The Guardians of the Galaxy, which is really big time. We went.
Why
I've been
don't you
on
just
some
have
good ones out
Amanda
there.
answer the questions instead of you? Have her come around and answer.
Well, I don't know
questions.
the name of the damn things. She just directs me to where I need to go, and if I'm a little bit of a ninny, I'll say no, I'm not going to ride that. Or if I feel like I'm adventuresome enough to climb in, I do it. And the first day we were out here Monday, I rode every single thing without exception that everybody else did.
Well, I
Old
tell you
man
what.
climbing on some death-defying contraptions.
Well, we can't thank you enough and Amanda enough for sending us those pictures. They were lights out. They are lights out. Casey, Paul, anything for the Hall of Famer? Yeah, he's got big plans today. He's got stuff going on.
What do you got, Paul? Let me hear it.
Me?
Is your name Paul?
I got big stuff going on?
No, I said Marty has big stuff going on. Do you have anything you want to ask
I was going to
him
say,
about?
I don't got anything going on. No, I got nothing for Marty. Casey?
I gotta know if you had what type of food you have there. Did you get the Mickey Mouse ice cream sandwiches, the Mickey Mouse pretzel? Like what did you get when you were there at Disney?
Well, yesterday we had a frozen banana, which was
awesome.
really good.
Yeah, covered in chocolate,
We
right?
also have those those Rice Krispie treats. Well, they have them out here in Mickey's, the shape of Mickey's head, and they're good. But they have these cookies out here. What are those cookies, Amanda? Oh, the popcorn. Yeah, Magic Key popcorn.
Churro brittle.
Churro brittle.
Yeah, those are good.
It might be the best cookies you will ever eat in your lifetime.
They are very delicious.
So I'm a big fan of here.
And by the way, Everett keeps coming back, Dad. He keeps coming back, and he feels bad. He wasn't trying to trick you into what kind of guy Dumbledore is. He really feels bad about it.
Yes, he was. Huh?
He feels bad. He's been writing in all week about it.
That's too bad. He gets no second chances. I mean, he clearly tried to trick me. And not only that, Tom, the mere implication that Dumbledore was a bad guy is enough to piss anybody off.
Well, here's what he says most recently. He says, nothing is as hair-raising as the horrible trials that Dumbledore put Harry through. Is that true or false?
That is true. However, there were reasons behind everything. I'm not going to argue with this clown over whether Dumbledore was a good guy or a bad guy. You heard Paul the other day talk about. They agreed with me that, granted, he put Harry through some tough situations, but there were always reasons behind what he did, and none of those reasons were nefarious in any sense of the word.
Okay. Well, I give it up to Everett. He keeps coming back. He's not backing down.
That's because he doesn't have a life. Tell him to get a life.
He asked you a simple question, which you just acknowledged that is accurate.
Did he say that?
No. He just asked you the question, did the guy not put him in some situations which were dangerous?
And I said yes.
Okay.
And I said yes, and there were reasons every time he did that. He loved Harry.
There were mitigating circumstances, right, Marty? Mitigating circumstances.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
I think
this guy doesn't know what mitigating means.
I think we should put together a lunch. I'm not listening to that shit, all right? I think we need to put together a lunch when my dad gets back, if he ever gets back. He's out there in La La Land in California, and who knows.
I'm coming back tomorrow.
Okay, well, I think we got to put together a lunch with my dad and Everett, and all of us,
That's fine. You get Everett to see if Everett can come out of the basement of his mom and dad's house to go have lunch with us, and we'll make it happen.
All right, before we let you go, Brandon, you have something for my dad?
Well, I need some advice tonight. I'm hosting the LaSalle Stag. I'm seeing it like I've done the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not just dressed up for you and Marty. It is with Doug Flynn and Corky Miller I'll be with tonight. Any good stories about either one of those guys?
Ask Corky. I just left, Arizona, where he was at the Reds fantasy camp, and the man and I were out there for the week. Ask Corky, is there ever going to be a year, as far as the Reds fantasy camp is concerned, where his team can beat Brett Tomko's team? And Corky will try to act nonchalant about it, but it grates on his nerves like you cannot believe that he has faced Tomko a number of times, and he's not been able to beat him, especially in the championship game. And ask him about that. And also ask Doug Flynn, is it time to put those T-shirts away with his picture on them? That we've seen enough of the so-called, calls himself the glue. Meaning he was the guy that held everything together in the Big Red Machine years. Not Bench, not Rose, not Morgan, not anybody but him. And he has these T-shirts that he wears of himself. And asked him, aren't they getting a little bit tired? And should you not put them away for all time?
The only thing I could add to that is if I could get one of those shirts in the next 4 to 5 hours before I go over there and whip it out in the middle of the monologue. That would be great.
Yeah, I don't know where he.
Yeah, that won't happen.
Cincy
that
shirts.
Won't happen, Brandon.
They have them in Cincy shirts, my wife says.
Oh, there you go. Run on down there. You got pals down there.
Yeah. All right. Might have to make a trip before we go.
There you go.
Thanks for the
Good
advice,
luck
Marty.
on that,
Call,
by the way.
Brandon.
Thanks.
That's big time.
Let me know how those questions go over.
Will do.
Will do for sure.
All right, pal.
All right, Dad. Well,
Enjoy
safe travels back to Cincinnati, and then as soon as you get off the plane, you're jumping on board the Reds caravan, right?
Friday morning at 8:00. Yep.
And who are the 1 or 2 big names you're traveling with? David Bell, who?
No, David Bell's not on my bus.
Okay, anybody else?
Nick Kroll will be there.
Yep.
Jim Day will be there. Chris Sabo will be there. And a couple of Reds players whose names I'm not aware of right now. Current players.
Tell all those guys we said hello. And one final footnote just for the record. Everett says, Tom, thanks for standing up for me. And he says, I moved out of my mom's basement 10 years ago.
God bless you, Everett. God bless you, buddy.
We're going to make that lunch happen. Dad, safe travels. Thanks for the time.
All right, Tom. Good luck to you guys.
All right. We love you. We'll see you later.
See you, Marty.
Love you.
So there you go. I mean, you got it all covered, right?
Always.
Amanda in the background telling him what rides they were on. I mean, he's still mentally with it, but I mean, come on, man.
The one thing I forgot to ask was, did he go to Universal to ride the Harry Potter rides?
Oh, you book it. Yeah.
Oh,
he
I didn't
loves Universal. That's his favorite spot.
Yeah.
Would Dumbledore be like one of the characters? I mean, walking around like you see Minnie or Mickey or.
I didn't see when I went. I didn't see Harry Potter characters.
You did not.
Around. No.
Tough.
It's hard to believe that wouldn't be on there, right?
I'm surprised you're not a Harry Potter guy, Tom.
Maybe I will be because I mean, it's sort of the supernatural stuff going on, right? Kind of that sort of thing. A little bit. Yeah. I mean, it more fantasy. I mean, clearly fantasy, but what's more the genre of what you would call it? It's not science fiction. A little science fiction.
It's fantasy.
It's fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Stephen King guy, and so he'll drift into that, kind of thing frequently. So maybe I would like it. Maybe I'll give it a chance. I'm a big reader. I'm in the middle of some rather deep books right now, though. Much deeper than my intelligence level. Very deep.
Like?
I am reading the story of Martin Luther. A fascinating, look, not picking sides if there is such a thing, because there's only one side on this deal, but his life story is a mind-boggling story, and what he went through during the quote-unquote Reformation, and it's an amazing story. Anyway, way above my intelligence level. So like Lord of the Rings, are you guys big Lord of the Rings guys?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's similar to Harry Potter, right? Kind of?
Yeah.
Total fantasy, right? With great stories and villains and protagonists and antagonists, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Harry Potter, I think, is more starts off as a more lighthearted teenage story that then turns into a more serious and has more dark tones towards the end of the series, because the purpose and the genius of J.K. Rowling, she made these books for teenagers that then grew up with the series, and when they became adults, it was more fitted for them.
Okay.
It was more fitted for them.
I never heard that before. Okay.
So I really enjoyed her story a lot.
Right.
I really enjoyed the Harry Potter series just for
Okay.
that alone.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's really interesting.
I'm not a Lord of the Rings.
Every day. No. Jolly from out in La La Land. He's out there. He says, and he's a Hamilton native. He says, by the way, that Harry Potter does walk around.
All right. Well, let's all take a Chatterbox trip out there. We'll bring Everett along.
What is wrong with Sir Boy Wonder?
Nothing, Tom.
What is that last thing he says there?
I have no idea.
Is Hank Hill? Is Hank Hill the guy from? What was that show? That animated show? Wasn't that the?
Oh, wasn't
King
that
of the Hill?
King of the Hill?
King of the Hill.
Okay.
It's a great show.
Okay.
King
of the Hill.
We might have Vach on the last 10, 15 minutes
There's a chance Vach.
There's a chance.
There's a chance Vach comes back in.
Well, I hope he comes back because I got to get on him. I got to get on him about his guy. His guy Dak. Hey, by the way, before we get to him real quick, I got to get this off my chest because this has sent me off the reservation. You got the Alabama NIL thing?
I do. I've got it pulled up.
This was tweeted out today by an Ohio State fan. And as all of you know, I am a big Ohio State fan, football fan, okay? I am. Guilty as charged, all right? This was sent out, and it said, a new NIL quote-unquote facility was being built and opened at the University of Alabama. And the question was posed at the end of that, how in the world can Ohio State compare and compete with this? I got to tell you, I almost lost my mind. If there is one school I'm going to say a second school, okay? The two schools that are built for NIL more than any others, and you could throw Georgia in as well because they're so close to Atlanta and all the money in Atlanta. The three schools that have no excuse for not being at the very top of the NIL as far as money is concerned are Ohio State, USC, and Georgia. They are three of the most prolific college football programs in the United States. And in Ohio State's case, more than USC, which is a private school, and more than Georgia, which primarily most Georgia grads tend to stay, and it's true for the SEC in general. Most SEC alumni of their schools really stay put in the southeast part of the United States of America. Ohio State University is a massive public school with hundreds of thousands of alumni literally from coast to coast. If you took the straight wealth of Ohio State alumni compared to Alabama, compared to USC, compared to Georgia, it would be from here to Mars away. I'm not suggesting every Alabama grad is not successful. I'm not saying that. I'm saying pure numbers. For anybody to believe Ohio State should not be right on the very top, at the very top of this NIL thing, plus it's one of the top 30 largest cities in America, by the way. All right, I'm off my rant. My man, Vach Lombardi.
Howdy, good morning. How y'all doing?
On short notice, Mom. Hey, you wearing black for the Cowboys?
No, I'm just getting ready to go to the gym, get a little workout before I get the rest of my day going. But I saw your DM and I was like, all right, cool. I'll come chill with Thom and let y'all relish in my Cowboy loss. But then I tuned in like, nope, Dad's here, gotta leave. And look, I already think dads don't get enough respect in general, so I had to respect the movement of content around. So everything's cool, 100%. Good morning.
I appreciate it. Good morning to you. Now walk me through, Vach, the reaction down there. I can listen to the national talking heads, and some of them love the Cowboys, some of them hate the Cowboys, and there's some in between. What's the feel of that game? Because that was a winnable game against the 49ers for Dallas on Sunday.
Sure. Well, if you had to guess what the field would be, you would probably be right. Everybody's calling for heads to roll. Everybody needs to be fired. This person, this. And I don't really get into the emotional reaction side of it, right? I try to stay neutral. I started, and I think it came from playing and coaching football. Like when I played football, I was much more emotional about football. Then I started coaching and I just started looking at it as, all right, this happened, we either move on or we don't, type of deal from it. So when we lose to the 49ers, I immediately go to, all right, logically, what happened here, right? But I'm content creator guy too, right? So I gotta, stand in front of the podium and talk to my audience, be like, all right, guys, this, and this. But the weird thing is there's people that want you to break furniture in your house. You know what I mean? Like there's people that want you to, pull down this TV that costs a lot of money that I mounted on the wall myself, and they want me to break. I'm not doing all that over no win or no W. I love my football just as much as you do. I love my Cowboys just as much as you do. But, I'm just not in the business of firing people that did their job well this year. I'm not in the business of, breaking things that cost money for your entertainment. I'm not so upset that I'm not watching. I'm not boycotting the Cowboys next year. It's been a lot of nonsense. And, people can feel however they want to feel. But just me in particular, I just don't want to feel like those people.
All right, but let me ask you this, Vach. It's been 27 years since the Cowboys have played in an NFC championship game. Everybody knows Jerry Jones is the general manager of the team. And he's the owner of the team, so he can have whatever title he wants. Does something need to change, though, there in Dallas? Does something? I mean, obviously, they're not going to get rid of Dak Prescott. But does something, and they're not going to get rid of Mike McCarthy, but does something need to change?
Well, there are many people that think you need to get rid of Dak and Mike McCarthy, but sure. I think things can get kind of politicky sometimes, but that may or may not be a thing that happens with most teams. I cover the Cowboys close. I don't cover everybody closely, so I don't know how much money politics get involved in things, right? But if I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, or if I'm not a Dallas Cowboys fan, right? Let's just say the non-Cowboy fan perspective. If you watch a Cowboys game, you go, man, Tony Pollard is much better than Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott makes much more money than Tony, but Tony looks like he's clearly the better back, right? Why does Zeke have to be the guy that starts, or why must Zeke get his 12 or so carries? Why must we take carries away from the better guy? Like things like that'll kind of happen. For the most part, I don't think this team does a bad job of, putting talent on a roster. I think this team just kind of, or Jerry Jones in particular is what you was asking. I do think there's this loyalty issue. There's this thing about, hey, this is my guy, so we're going to run with that guy. This was a Jason Garrett thing for a while. And I do think Jason Garrett was a guy that had his place, right? He can get you to an 8-18, but then you have to get to that next level, right? Jason Garrett was a head coach for the Cowboys way too long because of loyalty. I think a guy like Kellen Moore, just a guy that they're super loyal to. Kellen Moore does a great job, and if Kellen Moore takes a bad offense, he can make it a good offense, right? But you'll see what these other teams can do. You'll see what these Shanahans can do, what these Mike McDaniels can do, right? And you'll go, man, if my team had one of them, right? What can we do? Like what would that look like on my team? So everyone, right now, most people in Cowboy, I would say 75% of Cowboy Nation right now, they say, oh my God, Dak Prescott is terrible. He's garbage. He should be cut. And I do think that's ridiculous, but I do think that Dak has capped out with Kellen Moore. Why do I feel like that? Because I've seen offensive coordinators take quarterbacks that are worse than Dak Prescott and make them do things that are impressive. And then as a team building type of situation, right? You know, like if these teams that are in the top 4 right now, they acknowledge that they're good teams, but then they made necessary steps to make themselves better teams, right? So if we're the Bengals and we go, all right, we got Joe Burrow. What do we play a season, then we go, okay, well, he needs somebody to throw to. You want the dude that you just won this college football championship with? Cool, we'll get him them. And then we'll go, all right, now what? We play another season. All right, this offensive line thing here, right? Cool, let's address conversation and do that. I think the Cowboys need to kind of do that, right? I do think Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback. I say he's top 5, but you know, people down on Dak right now, so I can't say that publicly. I think Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback, just like people would say that Josh Allen or Justin Herbert are these top guys, right? But you can't run Noah Brown out there as your wide receiver number 2 and be like, all right, let's play against the Eagles, let's play against the 49ers, that they were a good team, but they weren't satisfied. Let's go get Christian McCaffrey. Let's bring in some other guys. Oh, the Eagles are a good team. Let's go add Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Let's go add A.J. Brown. The Cowboys are a good team, but instead of adding players to compete with these other good teams that are adding players, we go, oh, Noah Brown's cool. We don't want to spend too much money. You know, we don't want to trade that second-round pick to go get a Jerry Jeudy. Let's just stick with T.Y. Hilton, you know, things of that nature. So I do think Dak Prescott is good enough to elevate players, but regular season is different from postseason because everybody gets much, much better in the postseason. So, yeah, he can elevate players, but he can't elevate Noah Brown or Zeke or Dalton Schultz enough to beat the number 1 defense in the National Football League, if that makes sense.
I think it's a fascinating point you make. And we were talking about this earlier today. I think what happens with some of these teams, and look, Dak got the big deal, and Bengals fans are going to be facing this probably this offseason of what happens when you now all of a sudden have to pony up for the big guys, right? And all of a sudden you got to pay, you know, I mean, Burrow's going to get more money than Mahomes. And then how does that start and affect the rest of the roster? All right, you watch games all 22. I don't know how much you watch the AFC. Maybe you watch both. So you tell me, going into this weekend, after we all put our head on the pillows Sunday night, what 2 teams will be playing in the Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona?
Well, if I could be honest with you, Tom, this is where my fandom kind of comes into play. My team ain't in. I hope they cancel the Super Bowl. I hope they don't have it. I hope it snows in. I hope there's a problem with the electricity in the stadium. I hope everybody there's a glitch in the Ticketmaster system and everybody gets the wrong time and date. I hope that Rihanna got something better to do and she can't have the halftime show. I hope the referees go on strike, sir. I care nothing about what's happening with the next with the next 2 weeks or so.
Come on, Vod, you're a football guy. Come on.
But we're doing content, so I guess I can have this conversation with you. I think, you know, Joe Burrow, in my personal opinion, I was around watching him, right? I was in high school when Tebow came out. I was around for a lot of these guys, man. Joe Burrow was the best college quarterback I've ever seen in my life, man. And I'm like, man, that dude gonna be the GOAT one day. I'm like, that dude is just like, he doesn't even, and it's funny because, you know, normally people lean into the arm talent guys and they're like, hey man, if I got a big arm talent guy, I can live with it. Joe Burrow isn't arm talent guy like the rest of the arm talent guys are, right? But Joe is up here guy. And I hate the up here guys because that's when we start to say things like, oh, well, is he going to be the next Tom Brady type dude? Nah, Joe Burrow isn't up here guy like Tom Brady's up here guy. Like Tom Brady does the safe up here guy. Joe is more dangerous, you know, shoulder up guy. Joe is more find you and attack you guy. You know, we don't get a whole bunch of dink and dunk from Joe Burrow. We get a lot of find the scrub in Joe Burrow, and that team is kind of built that way. All right, this is your deficiency. We're gonna go right at that, and we're gonna keep doing it and keep doing it. Even if you find a way to stop it, we're gonna just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I just love that about Joe, and he did that in college. He's doing it now. And the more I just watch Joe Burrow, man, I'm just like, you know, that dude is just on his way to be like the guy. And we're going to have this conversation because I still think Pat Mahomes is the guy. But at some point, the one-on-one record is going to matter at some point. And I don't think Joe's lost to Pat at all before. And, you know, this ain't just like regular season stuff. It's like big game stuff also. So that Chiefs defense leaves a lot to be desired. Like, they got dudes, but the defense as a whole leaves a lot. They just kind of lean on, can we score more than you? Joe Burrow can score with anybody, especially if Jamar Chase and company is healthy. Joe Burrow can score, he can put up points, better than, with the best of them, right? And Pat Mahomes is kind of going through this little ankle thing. We'll see what that looks like. But even with a healthy ankle, Joe Burrow has beat up on Pat. So that's kind of a thing there. So from the AFC side, I got Joe and company. I don't have a score. I don't have a number. Should be a big game.
Okay.
Should be big. Okay. Big points put up. But I got Joe on this side. Not just saying that because I'm on your show. People can watch my show, and I'm a huge fan of Joe. And on the NFC side, I hope they cancel that game in particular because I don't like neither team on either of those sides. But I think Jalen Hurts, and listen, man, this may be Cowboy. People will say, "Oh, Vaz, you're a Cowboy hater," but I don't like the 49ers either. I'm just waiting on that time to where Jalen Hurts shows himself and shows who he really is, right? Shouts out to the Eagles organization, right? Because they've done a fantastic job of, putting him in place and, surrounding him with what they got, 16 All-Pros over there, 16 Pro Bowlers and, 4 All-Pros, 5 All-Pros, something like that. They've done a fantastic job of surrounding Jalen Hurts with, fantastic talent, right? But whenever you put pressure on Jalen Hurts, whenever you play super defense with Jalen Hurts, he tends to look a little different. And I know Eagles fans are celebrating beating up on Daniel Jones and the Giants, but that's Daniel Jones and the Giants, to be fair. I just saw firsthand what that 49ers defense was. And at first, let me just give respect to 49ers fans, right? Because at first, as a Cowboy fan going into the 49er game, I was like, you saw what Jarrett Stidham did to them boys. You saw David Blau and Colt McCoy. They haven't seen anybody like Dak Prescott and company. And then they roll in versus Dak Prescott and company, and they put hands all over Dak Prescott and company. So just in my mind, I think that defense is enough. I don't know if the world's going to be ready for a rookie quarterback to be in the Super Bowl or whatnot, but that dude's gonna look like a rookie at some point. So it just comes down to the better coaching staff, in my personal opinion. I've just seen Shanahan do fantastic things with his offense, and DeMeco Ryans gonna be a head coach one day. He's doing fantastic things with his defense. So I'll just go Bengals and 49ers.
All right. Well, around here, that would be the third time the two franchises will play in a Super Bowl, and the Bengals are 0-2 against the Niners. So I think a lot of people around here would be rooting for that. Vach, you have go throw around those tires. Guy your size, you probably don't lift weights. You probably just pick up those tractor tires and throw them around a little bit, right?
Well, I am country strong. I'm from Mississippi, so I did just do a lot of chopping wood and baling hay and roping cows and things. So I am naturally strong. But I go to dojo, man. I go to Muay Thai, so I go and punch bags and people. I punch and kick bags and people, and that's how I get my cardio in. But I do lift weights though.
My man, Butch. I'm standing far away. He's all the way down there. I'm staying away. He's punching people, man. I mean, look at the size of that cat. So are you before I let you go, are you got a little cowboy in you? Did you just say you were roping calf?
Very, very young, like very, very, very young when I was in my youth, Natchez, Mississippi. We had farms out there. We had a lot of farm land. I had a BB gun. I had a 22 when I was very young, and I was just outside. So yeah, we would do a lot of farm work. I didn't do it into my adulthood because we had moved on. We moved to a different neighborhood and things like that. But I did build a lot of my natural body outside.
You're the man, Vach.
I don't do rodeos. I don't do rodeos now. Just I'm a little different. I work for the volume. I'm a little fancy. I like sushi now, so I don't really do a lot of those things. But just the ingrained country stuff in me, though. I still fish. I would love to go hunt when I go back home. Sometimes I will do those things. But I'm not roping cows and goats anymore.
All right, Vach. We thank you for your time, my man. You're the best.
Appreciate it. Salute.
My man, Vach. That's our guy, right?
Yeah, he's awesome.
He really is awesome. He is fantastic. He's smart. He knows his stuff. He's got the Bengals v. Niners.
How would this city react to that?
I think everybody would really be fired up. I think 90+% of the Bengal fans, and I have nothing to base that on, I think 90% plus Bengal fans want the 49ers v. Bengals for a third time to exercise the demons, as we like to say.
The rocket ship.
It would be fun. All right, anything else before we go here?
We got a cherry on top.
All right, we got a cherry on top. Presented by United Dairy Farmers. What is it?
This one's kind of wild. I saw this yesterday.
We've got box lunch coming up. but a Zen moment.
So this one comes from Twitter. NFL photographers will go to near any length to get the right shot. And this comes, I got the tweet from Front Office Sports. This is a video from a photographer at the Minnesota Vikings game. Don't know her name. She's on TikTok. Look at this. She's walking the catwalk.
How cool is that?
She's walking the catwalk to look down and get a picture.
I mean, how cool is that?
Look at that.
I mean, do they let people do that normally? I can't imagine. Like, this must be a special occasion for her to be able to get up there, right?
Probably a team photographer would be my guess, right?
Usually you have to be a team employee to be able to do stuff like this. Usually. I don't know what the rules are in the NFL, but generally when you have facilities like that, there's legal stuff you got to be able to do to walk a catwalk.
That is really cool.
That's crazy.
Really cool. Thank you for that cherry on top. That was nice.
Absolutely.
All right, we're shifting gears to the box lunch. All the guys, a pride of Hamilton, Ohio. Trace and Reed. What's happening, boys?
How's it going, Tom?
Doing well, Tom.
How are we doing? Boy, there were a lot of enthusiasm there from Trace.
We are. We're doing well. Not a Debbie Downer.
Sounds like my wife in the morning. Hey, what's happening? Good morning.
Tom, I got a question. You were just talking about the 49ers. And me and Trace were just talking about this right outside the door right before we walked in. If the 49ers had top 10, top 5 quarterback, which they clearly don't with Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
If they had a top quarterback, would they be thought of as one of the greatest NFL rosters of all time? I mean, we're talking George Kittle's probably a Hall of Famer. Trent Williams is a Hall of Famer. Nick Bosa's well on his way to becoming a Hall of Famer. Fred Warner might become a Hall of Famer at linebacker. And who knows, Christian McCaffrey might keep it going, and he might be a Hall of Famer. Debo Samuel's great. All-pro guy. If they had a quarterback, are we looking – Trace made this joke last week as a combination of the 85 Bears and the greatest show on turf Rams. But they have a roster that's pretty comparable.
There's no – well, I mean, what have they won, 11, 12 in a row?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big-time team.
Right. They've got a great coach.
With a third-string quarterback.
Right.
Third-string quarterback. Now, they've gotten creative and, and they've had the luck of playing some really bad teams, defensive teams. That was not the case last week. We're going to find out because if you're going to make a statement like that, and I'm not saying that you even implying that is off base because, I mean, what they're doing,
right?
They're backing it up, right? They haven't lost forever. They haven't lost in 2.5, 3 months, neither the Bengals for that matter. But it's amazing what they've done. But after watching that game last week, they can be beat. The team that's going to beat them is going to be a good team, not the Raiders, where it was the first time and the only time where Brock Purdy had to come from behind in the fourth quarter to win a game. Yeah. Raiders are terrible. For them, I think that whole thing this week and for Philadelphia, if Philadelphia can jump on them, like, say, the Bengals did the Bills last week, and that's easier said than done. Yeah. But if there's a team capable, it's Philadelphia. Because, I mean, they were the best-looking team last week of anybody that's in the Final Four now.
Looked like a wagon.
I mean, when Hurts is healthy, they can run it, they can throw it, they get after the quarterback. If the way Philadelphia runs the ball, if they get a lead, that's the recipe for beating the Niners.
It's going to be hard-nosed over there in the NFC, conference championship.
That'll be smash-mouth game.
As smart as Vach is, and as much as I like his takes, why is it so difficult for him to see that Dak is not the guy?
I just think he's a Dak guy.
But at what point do you watch a game like last week, and you have a rookie quarterback on the other side and Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy is very serviceable. I think Casey's even backed off of his take a little bit. I think he can play. I really don't think he's a bad quarterback. But you watch a rookie quarterback on the other side, and in that game when I'm watching it, and I tell myself, I think I'd rather have Brock Purdy on my team than Dak. It's Dak's mindset in my opinion is oftentimes you got to know the nature of the game. You got to understand that sometimes punting the football is an okay thing to do. And when your defense is getting 3 and outs, yep. It looked like the 49ers might not be able to get more than 2 first downs on any drive.
You're right.
And what does Dak do? He goes out there and he gives them the ball right there on the 30-yard line. The defense stands up. They hold him to a field goal. And he gives the ball away again. And he doesn't, not one time in that game did I ever think, if they didn't have Dak Prescott, they weren't going to make that play.
I'm with you.
Say you have a top 5 quarterback.
I brought up a great point, though, about what other teams have done when they have their elite guy. I thought that was a really interesting point. Because, let's face it, since the day Joe Burrow got here, had they not, right, drafted T. Higgins, had they not drafted, after a crappy year, Jamar Chase, had they not gone out and spent all the money on their offensive line, okay, Joe Burrow's a great quarterback, but he's the chances are very strong he didn't play in back-to-back AFC championship games.
You say that, but then I would counterpoint by saying you can't have everything. Dak can't have these elite wide receiver guys and have an offensive line like he's had. He has a lot of time in that pocket. It's not like he gets pressured a lot. He has an incredible offensive line, and I think he has some pieces that are okay. And I would also remind people, and I'm not saying Jamar Chase is a nobody when I say this, but he got hurt, and what did the Bengals continue to do?
That's right.
T. Higgins was out for a few weeks. What did they continue to do?
Right.
There was a week where they played the Browns, I think, where Joe Burrow had literally none of those quote-unquote star wide receivers out there, and they continued to win.
And Hayden Hurst was hurt.
And Hayden Hurst was hurt. So
Yes,
I would just say, if you give Joe Burrow the same amount of time that Dak Prescott gets in that pocket, it doesn't matter who's running routes. There's enough guys in the league that are good enough wide receivers that if you put the ball on the money, they're going to catch it.
Well, I think, I think he was talking about not only talent, but I think he was also talking about the coaching. And the Kellen Moore thing is where he made specific point there that they've run their course. I think anybody who's watched the Cowboys, and I'm a huge Ezekiel Elliott fan and all he did at Ohio State, but for him to be getting the ball these last 2 years, 12 to 14 to 15 times in a game, you may as well punt.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
No doubt.
He would not be getting that number of carries for any team in the league in 2023. Why is he still getting them for the Dallas Cowboys? He had great years. He was a great player, best back in the league, but not anymore. Pollard should have been getting 25 to 30 carries a game if he could withstand that, let's say 20 to 22 every game. To me, they basically punted on plays, and it breaks my heart to say it. But they punted on plays this year by giving the ball to Elliott 12 to 15 times a game.
When I watched that game
Brian
last
Callahan wouldn't do that. Zach Taylor wouldn't do it.
That's fair. And I'm not trying to kill Dak. I just don't think that Dak's one of those guys where I look at him and I think he's the difference in this game. When I watch Joe Burrow play, there's times where I'm like, if the Bengals don't have Joe Burrow, they have no chance.
Yeah.
And I know you're comparing Dak to Joe, and you could argue that Joe's the best quarterback in the league, and you compare Dak to Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and all these elite-level guys. But at the end of the day, I watched Dallas play against the Niners, and the only thing that I noticed in that game that was relatively different was one quarterback was turning the ball over, not making plays, and the other quarterback, like him or not, was just being within a system, and he made just enough plays to let their team to be able to kick just enough field goals to win the game. I'm
not a Dak guy.
And it doesn't mean I want to kill Dak. It's just like at some point I think at some point you gotta rip the Band-Aid off and say maybe we need to move forward.
Well, Jerry Jones doubled down after the game.
Well, he always doubles down.
He doubled down. He said, "Hey, look, he was asked about guy who was 9 months removed from being the last pick in the draft." Compared to a 7-year starter who's supposed to be elite. And Jerry, right after the game, he gets more pub in his press conferences after the game than the head coach and the quarterback. And right after the game, he says, hey, look, if we played him 10 times, I'd take my chances with Dak to win 8 or 9 of those games. Well, they only play one time.
Right.
All right, boys, what do you got coming up? Excuses. Who's got them?
We'll talk
Not
about
us.
it.
No excuses.
No excuses.
None. And you win. Casey, Paul, Brandon, good luck tonight on the LaSalle Stag. It's a big league event. Yeah. I've done that event. They do a heck of a job over there. You're a LaSalle guy, though. Yeah. It's even more big league. All right, time for box lunch. Take it away, boys.
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice
The worst
microphones.
trade of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana Purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3 million.
Then I came to realize these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
I hate to hear that.
Tomorrow
When we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
One of these days, we're going to get a track. We got to get a track, right? Casey? Think we're getting a track? I mean, that's our responsibility. We'll get that track ran at some point. But we have the usual suspects in here today. We got Paul looking fresh, as people in the chat have brought up.
He looks good. Cut.
I got to get a cut later today. We got Reed Mouse in the house. Say ho. I don't have a fancy thing of saying with say ho. And then McAllister.
And Tom's head.
And Thom. But Tom's fine. So the first thing, which, this is where I don't want to hear excuses come Monday, okay, about this whole Mahomes ankle thing. If Mahomes is going to decide to play and he thinks that he's capable of playing, I don't want to hear after the fact, if he doesn't play well, about how his ankle was the reason as which he didn't play well, right? You can't have it both ways. And I'm not suggesting that he should sit on purpose or he should bail out of possibly playing this game when he thinks he could be serviceable. But if he gets in the first drive or two of this game, fellas, and he realizes that ankle in 10-degree weather isn't cutting it and he's not able to play that well, at what point as a quarterback, as a teammate, as a leader of a team, do you have to be honest with yourself and say, Chad Henne might be a better option than me right now because I literally can't do the things that I normally can do? And that's where I don't feel, quote-unquote, sorry about the idea of holding Mahomes accountable for however he plays. If he goes out there and plays well, he's going to get all the praise in the world. If he goes out there and plays poorly, I can tell you right now there's going to be a handful of people, if not a massive amount of people, that are going to say it's largely because of his ankle. He's the one that's making the decision. Largely, he is the one. You could say, well, it's the training staff, it's the coaching staff. No. They're going to Patrick, and they're saying, Patrick, can you play or not? And he's got to have an answer. And if he answers yes, everyone's going to call him a warrior. They're going to say that, basically he's, how they do it, that he's a gamer and he's going to make plays. They're going to numb it up. They're going to do all the things. I get it. Maybe he can go out there. But I don't want to hear the excuses that on Monday when he throws 2 interceptions or he has a bad game, that you hold him accountable as if he was healthy. Is that fair or unfair, fellas? What do you think about that?
Fair, right? It's a little fair, and you're right about the point about if he truly can't play, then he needs to recognize that he shouldn't play. But, your entire life you're told as a competitor, like, you stay in the game, you stay in the game, you stay in the game. But at some point you got to have some self-awareness and be like, if I truly am a detriment to this team, then I've got to pull myself out. Because no one's going to go up to Patrick Mahomes and be like, hey, man, you can't play. It's going to come down to him. But like you said, it's a 0-loss game for Patrick Mahomes at this point. Because if he wins the game, the mythos of Patrick Mahomes lives on and moves forward and be like, oh, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. He did it on one leg. I think who's the Kansas City fan? Nick Wright?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nick Wright.
Said he's the third best quarterback in the league.
Third best quarterback in the league. Goes Patrick Mahomes 1, Joe Burrow 2. Patrick Mahomes on one leg's the third best quarterback in the league.
Oh, yeah.
Yikes. But the mythos lives on, and if he loses, he just goes, oh, well, he was banged up. And I think that's what you're getting at, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. There has to be some loss here. And that loss is, if you can't play, then don't play. But if you're going to play, we have the right to criticize you for how bad you play.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. And it's just a relatively simple point. And I already know the narrative, and I already know how this is going to be painted if he doesn't play well. And it's going to largely be that he was hurt. And I'm just sitting here saying on Wednesday, well before the game happens, that I am judging Patrick Mahomes, and you could say I'm a hater already. That's fine. If he goes out and plays well, then it's gonna look terrible for my take, right? But if he goes out there and doesn't play well, I'm holding him the same accountability as if he was completely healthy, because it's his decision on whether he's going to play or not. So I don't think he can play. We talked about this before. I will be utterly shocked if he plays.
They've tripled down on it, though. Like, he's going to play. Like, Andy Reid said he's going to play. Patrick Mahomes, I believe, tweeted that he's going to play. Like, there's no indication that he's not going to at least try to play, at least to this point. And maybe they're smoke screening this game heavily, but by all accounts, he is going to try and play. Now, how well he can play, I don't know. But
is it worse to play in a game, start a game? And this is one of those things where it's completely hypothetical. Chat can chime in on what they think. If you're Chad Henne, would you rather be in a position where you know there's a good chance that you're going to play, but you're just not going to start, so you might come in? Or would you rather just know that you're playing and start? Like, clearly you would rather just know that you're playing and start the game, right? So how big of a disadvantage are the Chiefs making it to where they're going to try to push a guy out there, and in one series he has to come out, and next thing you know, you're running your backup quarterback out there? Is that a huge deal, or am I making that out in my mind to be bigger than it really is?
I think, to me, it's how big of a deal it is depends on how much he's involved with what needs to happen in practice this week. Because if everything is game planned around Patrick Mahomes, and everything is the focus of this week for the Chiefs is Patrick Mahomes and how he's going to play, and then all of a sudden Henne gets thrown in there. Now, the Chiefs are smart enough. This is the same point I made on Monday. Andy Reid knows the Chiefs are smart enough that they're not going to leave. Chad Henne is going to get the reps that he needs this week in practice to be able to be a serviceable quarterback on Sunday. But I think you would not agree with this, Trace, but I think a lot of people would say that they would still take a hurt Patrick Mahomes over a Chad Henne. It doesn't sound like you would agree with that. But
no. What percentage of Patrick Mahomes until you agree that Chad Henne's the better option?
I don't know.
You got to have a general idea in your mind of, like, if Patrick Mahomes can't do this, Chad Henne's the better option. In your mind, what is that?
40% of what he can do. I mean, it's pretty low. I would take Mahomes over Henne any day of the week.
I think the Chiefs are going to live or die with Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, my God, you got a franchise guy, and you're going to go to – again, what I said on Monday – it's not like Chad Henne is a first-year backup that they drafted in the 6th round that they're going to just throw out there to the Wolves and hope he does okay and catches lightning in a bottle for 60 minutes. He's a guy that's been around for a long time, has been paid millions of dollars, and has sat in an incredible offensive system in Kansas City to know what he needs to do behind a really good quarterback consistently and a supremely talented head coach. He's not going to just be given nothing and just have to go out there and have some magic like we all thought Brock Purdy was going to do when he got out there.
Chad Henne's done this twice now in the postseason, where he's come in for a banged-up Mahomes and has played really well. So to think that it's a disadvantage to him to not start him, he's done it twice, right? He's come off the bench. You know what it reminds me of, Trace? You played college baseball. You remember, like, you're at Urbana, you probably had like a freshman come in that had a lot of talent, but just had no idea how to pitch. Like, and you play on a Tuesday night, and you're like, we're gonna give this kid a start. But you tell the senior, like, hey, but be ready. We might need you in the second. We might need you in the second inning, third inning if shit hits the fan here. That's what it kind of reminds me of. Like, Patrick Mahomes gives you the better chance to win without a doubt, and you got to at least throw him out there to see how he plays. But you tell Chad Henne, like, come on, you might need to be. You got to get ready to go.
It's more Henne love for me than it is Mahomes hate in a way, because I think Henne has proven to me that he's serviceable. Like, he knows the system really, really well. He's not fumbling around a playbook. He's been there long enough to where this isn't like a guessing game anymore. He's very, very knowledgeable within the system that they play in, and he proved it by coming in last week and going 99 yards. And I know that's a laughable thing at times, when it's like, Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback, or Chad Henne's whatever. Or maybe the Chiefs are just a dynasty to where you stick anybody in there, and maybe that's relatively true. But Chad Henne did go 99 yards right down the field, and we can't just assume and push that to the side like that was a fluke. Because I don't think it was. I think if you put Chad Henne in the game right off the rip versus what I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be, this is where it gets laugh out loud funny at times. I think it's dead even, if not favored. Chad Henne's the better option. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But again, the main point of this whole segment was I don't want to hear the excuses about how well someone played or didn't play based off the circumstances, because the circumstances are known before you go into the game, and you can't cry wolf when you say, oh, well, he didn't play well because his ankle was hurt. He knew his ankle was hurt before he stepped out there. He could have made the decision that he wasn't going to be able to play. So if he plays, then it is what it is. I'll leave it at that. You got anything to add to that, fellas, over there?
No, other than that, I agree with you. I don't think the injury excuse is really lame. It's always been lame in football. When you go out there, you're out there. You're playing. Whether you like it or not,
But there's times, Casey, to that point, there's times where you could make an excuse. Like the Bengals offensive line right now, if someone's really banged up and they can somewhat go out there, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. But if there's a genuine backup that you could argue could do just as well, then I think that, to your point, maybe it is an excuse. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, so we're clear, I agree with you that I think they should probably play Chad Henne if the injury is as significant as we saw that last game. There's just no way that Patrick Mahomes can play and not potentially re-hurt himself again with the pass rush that the Bengals have and the way that they've been able to contain him in the past. I mean, his game is so predicated on him being able to extend the plays that the Bengals won't let him. The game plan should be that they won't let him sit in the pocket because they know he can't run around in the pocket or outside the pocket.
Right.
I mean, I think they should start Chad Henne. I don't think the excuse for the injury it should be, I don't think they should use it. I think if you're out there, you're out there, and if not, then
yeah. Lazia Lee right now in the chat. By the way, I'm not a Bengals fan, but I'm going to become one this week because I think it's hilarious to sit here and say that. Well, you say injury excuses, dude. Yeah, it's a fact. There's facts. There's injuries every single week, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but you can't sit there as a Chiefs fan and be like, well, we have our best quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is hurt. Well, like the whole entire offensive line for the Bengals is banged up. They're hurt. Like, to Casey's point, at some point in the football season, everyone's got injuries. Every team has their litany of things that they have wrong with their team. The question is can you overcome it or not? And some of that's depth. And yes, the quarterback's the most important position that there is on the field. I'm not debating that. But I'm not going to put up with the idea that the Bengals are somehow now they're at full strength and now they don't have an excuse. Like, everybody has injuries. That's why I said there are no excuses come Sunday. No excuses on either side. It doesn't matter. I don't want to hear the narrative of one guy getting a pass because of something happening when he's the one that made the decision to play or not. Let's move forward. Reed, you've been on this take, if you will. It's not a shtick. You believe it. I don't believe it. You believe it. That Patrick Mahomes is by far the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And if you said out loud that if the Bengals win on Sunday, what are you going to do?
So it goes both ways. Just like what you said previously, the excuses go both ways. That if Patrick Mahomes loses this Sunday, there's no excuses. I will retire that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback in the NFL. I will retire that because Joe Burrow's beat him 4 times, and I will continue. I will never get back on that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL until he beats Joe Burrow. Now, the The same thing said. If a hobbled up Patrick Mahomes beats Joe Burrow on Sunday, beats the Bengals on Sunday, then it's going to take even more for me to get back on the other side. And for you two to say that Chad Henne starting might be the better play for the Chiefs, guys, Patrick Mahomes played really well last week. He played really well on one leg. He completed 73% of his passes, had a passer rating of 112, which is the second best passer rating he's had since Thanksgiving, threw 2 touchdowns, and he only played 1 drive at 100%. So Patrick Mahomes on one leg played incredible. So to sit here and think that he was hobbled and banged up and didn't play well last Saturday seems a huge misstep in logic, or at least in misremembering.
No,
but like I said, I will retire that Patrick Mahomes is the best in the NFL if Joe Burrow beats him on Sunday. And good golly, I hope that's the case, because I'm going to be an Burrowhead, as we beat him again.
Yeah, I mean, I only said what I said because I fear of the re-injury possibility or making it worse. If he gets hurt now, like let's say he broke his ankle or he tears something in his ankle or Achilles or whatever, he's out for the beginning of the next season.
But it's for a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
I get that, but I don't know if the risk is greater than...
No. Hold on. I'm stop you right there, because you always do whatever you can whenever you have the opportunity to get to, like, you're not sitting for the potential of the future, because you just never know when you're going to be back in this position.
Yeah, but arguably, I hear every year about how Mahomes been in 5 straight AFC championships. He's a dynasty. They're a dynasty. They'll be back. Not a big deal. I've heard that a lot. And so to flip it on your head, I know what you're saying. Most times, go for the gold. Who gives a damn?
Yeah, you got to.
But that is your man. To Casey's point, that is your guy. Like, if Joe Burrow,
this is the first round of the playoffs.
If Joe Burrow had a knee situation going on right now, and you said, if a doctor came to you, and we're making hypotheticals out the ass right now.
Right.
If a doctor were to come to you and say, listen, there's a good chance or a decent chance that if he plays in this game, that he could have a career-altering injury. Now, I know that it might not happen, but it could. I'll be honest. As a Bengal fan, I'm not taking that deal. I got 10, 12 more years of Joe Burrow.
If Joe Burrow had a high ankle sprain going into the AFC Championship game, I want him to play.
Oh, he's on the field.
Yeah, I want him to play. So if he has the exact same injuries Patrick Mahomes are here, I want him to play.
100%. Yeah, and I'm only saying it because we don't really know how severe the injury is.
Yeah.
Because they've already come out and said that he's going to play.
Right.
But the way that he played this last game, yes, he played well.
He played really well.
You saw him on there. He was
not mobile.
He would take the snap and literally hop on one foot to hand the ball off on the run play. And I don't think that they're going to be able to get away with the same game plan. Yes, he played well, but they had to rely on that run game a lot more, and the Bengals are not going to let that happen. The Bengals are a much better team than the Jags. I even said it last week. The Jags were a poor man's Bengals, and they almost beat them.
Yeah. Do you think that the game plan, the last 3 times they've played Mahomes, was to keep him in the pocket? It seemed that way. It seemed like, listen, let's stay on our rushing lanes. I know we want to sack him. If we do sack him, great. But more importantly, let's make sure that he doesn't get out of pocket, off script, and beat us that way, because that's when he's at his most dangerous. Let's drop a bunch of guys in coverage. Let's just keep Hendrickson and Hubbard around the edges, contain him, and make him make plays out of the pocket. That's what it seems like they've done.
Yeah.
Casey, I mean, this is all a big guess, but that would almost go defy the logic with the situation that he's in now.
Right. I mean, I can see them doing the same game plan. And the thing about it was he was mobile enough to extend the play while they had 8 back. I mean, there's a clip, I think we didn't have it on the show today, but last game, just this last time they met each other, and Paul Paycor,
I love it.
He was scrambling around the backfield for 8 seconds. We were covering guys for about 8 seconds, then he makes a throw, and he completes a 20-yard pass. They call it back because lineman downfield.
Right.
And the only thing they did was contain him in that pocket because he's not good when it comes to the scripted stuff. When it comes to the 3-step, just throw it as quick as you can. He's really great. He is amazing at off-script stuff. And when you take that away from him, I think you're going to see a way different quarterback.
I agree.
I really do.
Do you guys feel this way? And when I watch him, again, you guys think that I watch him from the lens of a hater, and some of that may be true. But when I watch him play, there are times where he has good pocket protection. The pocket is stable.
Okay, good line.
Well, what I'm saying is that he will almost look to spin out and try to start to try to scramble when he doesn't theoretically need to scramble. It's almost as like his DNA as a football player is to try to be off script. And when you take that away from him, to Casey's point, that's the part of me that makes me think that actually it's better to go with a guy that's fully healthy. When you take away one of his best pitches, to your point, if you take away, I mean, this is a little too far, but if you took away Tim Wakefield's knuckleball, then he's worthless. And maybe that's too far of a stretch. Give me another pitcher that you know off the top of your head. Like,
it would be like taking away Randy Johnson's slider. He still got the fastball.
Rivera cutter.
Well, he only threw one pitch. I mean, you just did the same thing. Like Tim Wakefield threw one pitch. Mariano Rivera threw one pitch. Casey said that he's not very good on script. That seems crazy. And I know he's better than almost anyone who's ever played the game off script. But to say that he's bad on script, seeing that we've seen, seems a major misstep.
I don't think he's
borderline just incorrect.
I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback on scripted plays.
I don't disagree with Casey. We'll see. You guys roll your eyes. You know what's beautiful about this, Casey, is one of us is going to be proven right or wrong finally. Because if he does,
I'm in a better shape than you guys. Because if I'm right, I'm right, and Patrick Mahomes sucks, and the Bengals are in the Super Bowl, hedging both sides, baby. That's the whole point.
Or you can be Casey and be right on both sides. Just saying.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. You are scared of Chris Jones, Reed. You put on here that you're scared of this man.
So
I don't know why you're scared of any of them, because I'll tell you. You know what this reminds me of a little bit? If I'm a Bengals fan, It's like every year when you're a Packer fan, and that's what I am, Lazia or whatever her name or guy's name is in the chat, who's just ripping me up and down one side or the other, calling me a Bengal fan. As a Packer fan, this game starts to remind me of like the Bears. It's like, yeah, the Bears have all these guys. They're in the NFC Championship game. We're not supposed to beat them, supposedly, but it's the Bears. Like, we're going to beat them. It's the Bears. It's like, at some point, as a Bengal fan, don't you just like the Chiefs? I don't care what happens. We're going to beat the Chiefs because that's what we do.
I think the whole point of the Chris Jones thing that I was going to bring up was the talk all of last week was, how is this line going to hold up? How is this line going to hold up? And they played fantastic. But you got to remember, the pass rush from the Bills was playing in snow, and that drastically affects a pass rush because you can't plant very quickly, can't move as quickly. And then secondly, Chris Jones is the best defensive player, or at least pass rusher, that the Bengals have seen to this point in the postseason. And on top of that, he's an interior pass rush, which is the Achilles heel of Joe Burrow, right?
Any quarterback.
Because he pushes back the center of the line, and that's when you get Joe Burrow kind of – if he can have the center of the field open, Joe Burrow's unstoppable. I mean, you can come off the edge and sack him 8 times, but he'll still look over the center of the field. Aaron Donald did this to the Bengals last year. When you push back the center of the line, that's when Joe Burrow is at his worst. And Chris Jones is like 3rd in the league in sacks, 15.5 defensive tackle. Most by the defensive tackle by like 5 sacks this year. Casey, you are more in tune with the offensive line. How worried are you that Chris Jones is going to dominate the interior of that defensive pass rush?
I think last game he was not as big of a factor. Now that we're with Max Sharping, he might be lining up on the right side a little bit more. I don't know, but Volson actually held his own. I'm going to double check the numbers real quick, but I do believe that last time they played each other, Chris Jones was not really a big factor. He might have, they ran for over 100+ yards on them with Chris Jones. So, I think Let me just double check this real quick. I don't want to speak out of term, but I don't think he's much of a factor as we think. I'm more worried about the edge. And I know Frank Clark isn't like a world beater, but he's different than Gregory Rousseau. I talked about this last week. Gregory Rousseau is like Sam Hubbard. Right. And look what happened to this last game against the Bills. I mean, Sam Hubbard isn't a world beater pass rushing. He's great at run defense, and he didn't play that great last week with Gregory Rousseau. But Frank Clark is a pass rusher. He is a genuine pass rusher. So let me just look at this real quick. Game reports, defense.
Can you look up Clark's PFF grade when they played the Bengals last time?
Yeah, so
do that as well.
He Chris Jones was the highest graded, but he only had 2 total pressures. He was more effective in the run game than anything.
So you're more worried about Frank Clark getting to Joe Burrow than you are about Chris Jones.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the edge and them blitzing than I am anything else. This team loves to blitz, and they love to get after the quarterback. They love to confuse the line, open up holes for free rushers to get in. I mean, the interception for the Jags game is a perfect example of that.
I'm not completely discrediting that because it could be true. I'm just pointing out the fact that Chris Jones has 3 times as many sacks as Frank Clark.
Right. No, I don't disagree with that either.
15.5 to 5. Carlos Dunlap has as many sacks as Frank Clark for the Chiefs defense.
And I think those two were more effective that game than anything. I mean, now, I only say that because the tackles, and I don't know if we're on the Jackson Carman train or not. But
that's the wild card of the weekend.
He is.
He still is. Like, was it the snow? That's my main thing. Was it the snow that helped get off?
Snow helped.
But I will say the snow didn't help the offensive linemen for the Bills all that often. I mean,
that's true.
Josh Allen wasn't getting all that time in the pocket. So I on one end, I do think the snow helped a little bit from the offensive line perspective. On the other end, I can't sit here and act like it was the total factor because the other side of the ball was having some problems.
Both teams.
So he's the wild card, and it's one of those things where again. Jackson Carman's been absolutely grilled in Cincinnati. He's been talked about as one of the biggest busts this team's had. And you look at all the great players that they've drafted, and they always point to that guy as being the guy that was the bust of the draft, right? He's not been in his natural position, if we want to give him a little bit of credit here, right? He's never been afforded that opportunity.
Yeah.
There might be something to the idea. I'm not saying he's going to be all pro or he's going to be all, he's not going to be going to he's not going to the Pro Bowl maybe at left tackle. But to all of everyone's point that they've been saying is that the line's not been good, period. And that's what I've always said in regard to like the freezing point. I've talked about that before with college football. College football is this wild thing where you have these teams that play every week and the scores wildly differentiate themselves between when Ohio State plays Indiana and they win by 40, but then when they play against Michigan, they score, significantly less points. Mm-hmm. There's a freezing point to this. At what point, like 32 degrees with water, when it just doesn't matter anymore, the water's frozen. At 32 degrees, or we'll say 30, at 30 degrees and 20 degrees, does it really matter what the temperature is in between there? Because the water's frozen regardless. So my question is if the offensive line is bad, or if you want to call it that, if the offensive line is bad, at what point when it gets worse, how much worse does it really matter? If you could get sacked 9 times on the road and still win, every week we talk about can the offensive line hold up? At what point is it a different subject? At what other point can we bring up right now that might be the difference when in reality, this offensive line, we talk about it every week, and it's never been the total reason as to why the game's been won or lost.
Yeah, can I just
Would
interject one
Go
thing?
Ahead.
So last year, Chris Jones was way more effective getting after us. He had 12 total pressures in both games, 6 each, 6 in the regular season and then 6 in that last championship game. This year, the fact that he only had 2 and the other 2 edge rushers both had 2 apiece, to me, it's an obvious answer that the edge is the more concern than it is Chris Jones. And the fact that we are able to run the ball, I think he has to now be more worried and more concerned about clogging up the middle than I think he was the first game, right? So I don't think that is the main concern for the Bengals. I think the main concern is how do we not make Jackson Carman and Akeem Adeniji look like scrubs? How do we scheme just like they did with the Bills, where they let them just go after the linebackers upfield? Do we pull the tight ends around to seal them with whams? Do we run a lot of trap? Things like that. That is, like I said, like we've been talking about, and just the little research I've done, that's where I'm more concerned. And the Chiefs fans, and they might come back and say, like, Frank Clark hasn't been as effective this year, and same with George Karlaftis. They're not really the guys, but they played pretty decently last time against the Bengals.
Yeah.
And we had Collins and we had Williams. Now we have Carman and Adeniji. So if we were looking for any semblance of me not being biased, that is where I'm looking at, is the edge.
Okay.
And the linebackers blitzing free, because they'll probably confuse the line. They'll try to do a lot of stunts, and that's how they're going to be able to get an advantage that way.
How many points do you think it takes for the Bengals to win the game?
Ooh, I'm still saying 27. I think that's the number.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So last two times, that's the score. Last two times it beat
27, 24.
Yeah, and then it was 34-31 in the regular season last year.
And listen, the Chiefs have had the lead. What seems like, I don't know off the top of my head what
had
it is.
Had a fourth
it
quarter
seems
lead in all three games.
Okay, so yeah, it's like the Chiefs have been there every single game. The variable for me at this point is Mahomes. It is the fact that if this guy literally is going to play on one leg, I don't see how that is going to be more effective or more fruitful than the first three meetings. It just obviously for very obvious reasons doesn't add up. One question came in from the chat. John Wright said the better question is, what are we going to do next year with Jonah? He's in his final year next season, and you guys obviously watch this much closer than I. But at this point, you obviously have preseason next year to somewhat figure maybe that out.
You
but
got a whole year.
You got a whole year to figure that out, and I don't think that they're married to anybody on that line. There's no one that's been good enough.
The free agent guys, yeah. Besides the free agent guys, but
right. So it's like probably be a competition for next year. But to be frank, and not to be funny about it, but who gives a rat's, in regards to who's going to win that job next year? All that matters is what's here and now. We'll talk Bengals. We'll jump into these last two topics. And let's talk Bengals a little bit longer, because that's what the chat wants to talk about. We'll talk about the Bengals. Scott Rowland got in the Hall of Fame. That's newsworthy. I love Scott Rowland.
What's your quote? My favorite quote.
My quote that Reed says, the favorite quote that I've ever said, is that if Scott Rowland isn't in the Hall of Fame, then there shouldn't be a Hall of Fame. And
I agree, 100%.
Scott Rowland was inducted. It was perceived to be that he wasn't going to have enough votes. That was the quote-unquote speculation, because there, as Reed has brought up, and I'll let Reed get into this a little bit longer, is just the idea that the public votes that were out there had a percentage of like 80 to 85%. And usually in years past, if you have 80, 85% from a public perspective, you're never going to get it once they go to the private ballots, because some people just don't even vote on anybody. Reed, I'll let you just talk about that briefly.
So, yeah, there's about 500 votes that go out, I believe, somewhere like 450. I don't know the exact number of votes, but there's a guy that tracks them. He's got a great Twitter account. It's Ryan Thibodeau. And he tracks the ballots and gives percentage along this whole voting process. And about 50% of the ballots had come in, and Scott Rowland was sitting right around 81%, 80% in just the private ballots. And in years past, we've seen he's sitting 81% in the public ballots. The private ballots typically to be more conservative. So when they come out, you normally drop about 10%. We saw Scotty Rowland just barely clip over 75%. Todd Helton got below 75. Carlos Beltran is another guy who's probably going to get in his first year on the ballot, got 55. So he'll continue to rise. But, yeah, that was the whole point. Scotty Rowland, well-deserving to go in the Hall of Fame. Probably will go in as a Cardinal? Philly?
Cardinal.
Cardinal? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's had such a great career that, you could make the argument for both. But I would, at the end of the day, I think he's a Cardinal. Phillies.
That's where he started. He played. I think he played his longest part of his career. For the
played a long time in Philly, though. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not Philly. How's that work? Do they get to choose that?
So there was a big controversy. You guys might not know this. There's a huge controversy. The player gets to choose. And back when Wade Boggs got inducted into the Hall of Fame, He got inducted right around 2005, and he played his final few career years with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. And the Tampa Bay Devil Rays paid Wade Boggs to go in as a Devil Ray because they wanted to have a Devil Ray in the Hall of Fame. And Cooperstown found out, and I think they nixed it. Like, all right, you guys don't get to choose which hat you get to go in. They paid Wade Boggs like a lot of money to go in as a Devil Ray just to say, we got a Devil Ray in the Hall of Fame, 10 years.
Marketing, baby.
Right, that's great marketing. And they've ruined that whole process now. But, yeah, that was a huge controversy. Like
so now it's strictly just the committee of Cooperstown or whatever they call themselves?
I don't know the process, but I maybe they suggest it, and then the committee goes like, wait, you're not going in as a Devil Ray. You played your final 3 years. Like Joe Morgan,
Scotty's not going in as a Blue Jay?
He's not going in as a Blue Jay. Toronto can't pay him enough money. So I don't know how that whole process works, to be quite honest.
How long did you guys get to watch Scott Rowland play?
I only know him as a Red.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember him coming up as that Cardinals team was loaded. They had Larry Walker, Jim Edmonds, Albert Pujols, Edgar Renteria, and then, of course, Scotty Rowland won like 106 games. That's how I remember. I don't remember him as a Philly. Do not.
Yeah. I don't remember him I had to go back and watch it last night when we were looking at the highlights about him as a Philly. I watched his Philly highlights, but I mean, I guess like generally I remember him as a Cardinal, but like to rattle that off, like read also, you're more of a historian than I am, but I remember going to Reds games and watching Scott Rowland.
Yeah.
But
Scott Rowland for Edwin Encarnacion. Great trade for both parties.
Pretty good deal for both parties. Here's why. With the Red situation, this is how it felt. I don't know if this is a very good analogy, but I'll use the bad analogy of the day, if you will. I felt like when Scott Rowland came to the Reds, there was this situation similar to when Ohio State got Urban Meyer or maybe Georgia got Kirby Smart. Mm-hmm. There was a culture shift, and there was an expectation that shifted within the organization, and it felt like, at least as a Reds fan, that there was an expectation to win finally. And Scott Rowland, it seemed like, brought that energy, or he was a part of that new wave of thinking. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit, and he came over, and it kind of was just this, magical recipe of success for the Reds. But it did feel like that situation where Urban Meyer's Ohio State teams looked different than Jim Tressel's Ohio State teams. And Scotty Rowland's, if you will, Reds teams felt different and felt like they were there to win more so than maybe, I don't know, whoever was there prior to Scotty.
And you hear those things echoed by people near the team, right? Marty, Thom, Bronson Arroyo even said when Scott Rowland came in, it shifted this whole face of the franchise. And he wasn't the face of the franchise, but he was the heartbeat of it, right? Yeah. And that's awesome to acknowledge.
Paul, 49 days. You have any idea what that is?
I'm hoping, if I'm doing the math right in my head, is that the first day of the NCAA tournament?
It's actually St. Patrick's Day. So.
It is actually the first day of the first four.
Okay.
Quick debate.
Okay.
Do you consider the first four the first round of the NCAA tournament?
I don't consider it the first round of the NCAA tournament, but I do think you make the turn. Like, you're going to consider yourself as a team that made the NCAA tournament if you play in Dayton, but it's not the first round of the tournament. No. First round starts on Thursday. They tried to brand that as the first round thing a couple of years ago.
They still do it. They still do, right?
I don't think they do anymore. I think it's just the first round. It's the first four.
Because the opening round turned into like the second and third round.
Correct.
Like, this isn't the third round.
Yeah, no.
Like your second game.
No, they realized their confusion. They fixed that. It's just the first four now. What they need to do, and John Rothstein has this idea.
Yeah, I love this.
This is the best idea that the NCAA absolutely needs to do. They don't need to expand the tournament. And I don't think they are going to expand the tournament. For everybody that saw all of those reports a few weeks ago, there was a lot more context to that did not get reported about how the tournament was going to be expanded or not expanded, whatever. It's not going to get expanded right now. It may be in 10 years, but it's not right now. What they need to do is take out the 16 seeds from playing in the first four in Dayton. They need to take out the 16 seeds and just put the 16 seeds automatically into the tournament and create the first four as the last 8 teams that make the tournament as at-large teams. So you see the last 4 in and the first 4 out, which if you are a team in the first 4 out, you are automatically a number 1 seed in the NIT because the tournament committee now says that the first 4 out literally is the first 4 teams that we had selected out of the tournament. It helps the coaches and the people that are the basketball operations people that are going to schedule to say, like last year, Xavier people were watching those games on Selection Sunday, and I remember watching the Dayton game and some of those other games and saying, well, maybe if this team wins the Richmond game, or Xavier wasn't even in the first 4 out there, which means they weren't even close, right? Yeah. So that helps the scheduling now to know, all right, well, if you look back at last year's schedule, Xavier wasn't even close. Go into the tournament. Let those 16 seeds make the tournament. Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah, all of them.
All those Texas Southern, these schools that constantly play in Dayton, let them make the tournament. I get where it's cool for the 16 seeds to say that they won an NCAA tournament game. That's the flip side of it, is that those schools get to say that they won a game in the NCAA tournament. But for the product of the tournament, let those schools in. Let them play the big name school. Stop putting them in Dayton, and make the Dayton games 4 games, 2 games each night, 4 games with the last 8 teams that make the tournament as at-large teams.
Basically make it a wild card round, right?
Basically, yeah. I think that'd be electric.
And you have just bigger brands, like it or not. I mean, they might not be the biggest brands, but in the last few years, there has been some big brands that have been on the last 8 teams in the tournament, right? This year, you could argue there's some really big names that would be in that 8 bubble. You have Duke that
Kentucky.
You could argue. Kentucky, who's turning around, Big Blue Nation. Kentucky, this isn't really Big Blue Nation.
Could you imagine Kentucky Duke at UD Arena?
That'd be awesome. Tickets would be so expensive.
Indiana's been in the first 4.
Our Hoosiers.
Ohio State's a team this year. You could argue if they get hot and make a little bit of a run, they could be one of those 8 teams. Like, there are big name college basketball programs that would be playing each other in that situation that you just laid out, Paul. And I think that they need to, like the NCAA doesn't do, why not just make a quick fix? Make a quick fix. Do it.
That's the thing, is that they don't need to add more teams, because if you think about adding teams, when people were talking about going to like 95, 92, 95
that's
teams.
That's a logistical nightmare.
It's a logistical nightmare, and everybody says, well, it's more profit. But is it really all that more profit when you have to travel all those teams?
Yep.
You need you need another round of facilities. There are a lot of costs that you don't think about just as like a general fan. If you're thinking, oh, it'd be cool to have more teams in the NCAA tournament. Is it really that much more profitable to have all those teams in? I don't know. I don't know. As you always say, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. But this is such an easy fix because you already have those teams there. You just have to reorganize how they get in or don't get in. So do it. Put those 8 teams in and let them play. And then when you go to the first 4, I love going to the first 4 in Dayton. When you go to the first 4.
Best arena in college basketball?
Best
UD?
I
don't know. We'll see.
I love UD Arena.
That is one of the top 5. It's one of the top 5 arenas.
Maybe environment. I don't know about
top 5 or 10.
I don't know about like physical arena.
I just love.
I don't care what locker room they're getting, Paul.
I'm not talking about
like walking around. Like the concourses are very cramped.
I'm talking about when you walk out on that floor, you sit in the stands. Just the aura of that place is super cool.
Oh yeah.
And if you've ever had the chance to walk through that locker room, you have to take a long tunnel all the way from ground level to straight to the floor.
Yeah.
It's a super cool place to watch a game or play. I think it's sick.
Yeah. But
no, UD Arena is an awesome place to watch a basketball game. And I hope, if nothing else, it continues to stay in Dayton for selfish reasons.
Right.
And if they do make it to where it is the last 8 in, Paul, that would be an electric factory for folks like us who like college basketball, but then also have the ability to possibly just drive right up the road. And those tickets would be a little bit more difficult to come by, without a question, if they make it the last 8 in.
Should Dayton pull a UCF and claim a national championship in 2020?
Yeah, that's such.
That's
I don't know how else to say it, but it's just it really, really stinks for Dayton because they genuinely had a chance. They had one of the best teams in the country. They had a lottery pick as a player, which you always need. Most likely to win the national championship, you need one guy that can carry you, and they had it. They had everything they needed. But correct me if I'm wrong, they've been to the Final Four, right?
Dayton basketball, like in the they lost to like UC.
Way back.
No, they lost to UCLA, I think.
Let
in
me
the
find the
championship.
year before I.
Yeah, 1967. They lost to John Wooden and Lou Alcindor and the UCLA Bruins.
Okay. The last question I have with college basketball, and move back to the Bengals here briefly before we get into the vault. At what point, from a year standpoint, does the history of a program become irrelevant? I bring this up because you just brought up the fact that Dayton basketball went to the Final Four, but they went so long ago that the generations of people that are watching them, does it really matter if they win or not? And I will bring up a point because I almost took a jab at the two of you.
Yeah.
And I almost took a jab in saying that it could have been worse because it could have been Xavier who had the team that you thought was going to go to the Final Four, and they canceled the season. And then all of a sudden you've never been to the Final Four, which gets brought up a lot by fans. And I know it's like a kind of like a little poke in the side type thing. And we have a couple programs in this city that are starting to get to the point where it's like, does it really matter if UC went to the Final Four in the 50s? Does it, or is it just the same as Xavier because you've never been in so long that it just feels like you've never been? And I would argue, like it or not, Reds fans, we're getting to the point of looking around and asking ourselves, yeah, we have the big red machine, but who cares? I mean, yeah, it's history. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. Listen, I got a signed poster of the grade 8 that I'm going to hang in my basement. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the Reds. But I'm also not naive enough to sit here and say to myself, it doesn't really affect me that much. It doesn't make a difference. So until we get our own flowers, what's it matter if my great-grandfather or my grandfather got to watch them in their heyday? What line in the sand is that? The chat can fire away. What line in the sand? How many years? 50 years?
People make fun of me because I oftentimes, when talking about my favorite sports teams, I say, in my lifetime, I've seen this and this and this. They're like, yeah, what about before your lifetime? Like, well, before my lifetime, I don't care what they did, to be quite honest. Reds fans make fun of me as a Cubs fan before we won our World Series. Be like, you guys haven't won a World Series in 108 years. It'd be like, yeah, well, I've seen more postseason success in my lifetime than you guys have because I was born after 1990. Same thing when Xavier fans or UC fans go like, what was the last Final Four you guys been to, Xavier? Well, and you're just like, well, you were born in 1996. Did you really enjoy that 1992 Final Four?
And the other thing about the UC Final Fours that I have always said back, I don't know why more people don't say this from the Xavier side. I feel like I'm the only one that ever says this. When UC made those Final Fours back in the 60s, before that,
yeah,
they only had to win 3 games.
Yeah, that was back.
Like that was before tournament expanded in 1985. They have made a Final Four since then. I'm not trying to deny that. They made it in 1992. But if you're talking about winning 3 games, like in 1960, whatever, with the last time they made the Final Four before 1992, they only had to win 3 games. That's the Elite 8.
Right.
Xavier's done that 3 times. So if we're talking about that, and you talk about historical success, I don't know.
To answer your question in short, Trace, I think that anything is on base for your conscious memory. So, like for me, anything that happened before 2002, when I was 6 years old, I don't remember a darn thing about sports. Now, I remember watching sports in 2003. So from there on out, like, yeah, if my team's better than 2003, I'll hammer you. That I've seen better days than you have, and I'm not going to listen to you when you make fun of the Cubs have won a World Series one time in 108 years. I don't care.
So since
my conscious memory.
it's subject. So like 8 years old and older.
So like for
fair?
you, like the early 90s, mid 90s, when do you remember start watching sports?
No, the first memorable thing that I can remember of watching was when the Reds played the Mets.
99.
I was young.
Yeah, David Cohn.
And I feel, was Vaughn on the team then?
Yeah, move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, 99. David
So that's the first time I remember. Now, granted, I still didn't really grasp the whole thing yet, but I do remember watching it and being into it.
Corey Dillon's rushing record game for me as a Bengals fan. As a Cubs
People
fan.
in the chat are going to be like all over the place. They're going to be making fun of how the fact that we're way too young or way too old. That's not what this is about. We're not trying to make you feel older and different.
Right,
It's just the basic question of, does it even matter at some point? How you guys? You're a UC fan. You obviously, and I think that it's something I would say if I was a UC fan to Xavier fans. If I'm in a rivalry and one team's never had something, then I could just have fun about it. Fair. Of course, I'm going to say it. But what in your mind, do you think there's a line in the sand, or do you what's your take on
of course
this?
there's a line in the sand, but I'll say this. Dang it.
$1. Did we go a whole
almost
oh my God. When we get a perfect game.
Tough. No, I was going to say my first sports memory, because I was 7, was Kenyon Martin break. I mean, like, I remember watching those games that year.
Yeah, I was going to say,
but like the
probably Kenyon
biggest
Martin's
memory
teams,
for
right?
me as a kid was Kenyon Martin breaking his leg. Like that was my first definite or defiant sports memory. Yeah, there's definitely a line in the sand. I mean, I wish UC would have went to the Final Four. They could have won had a chance to win the national championship in 2000 when Kenyon Martin broke his leg. So yeah, I think the 92 Final Four is definitely more relevant than the 60, 61, 62, and they won the title 2 of those years.
Right.
It's a famous Thom line, and it's a tired joke. I mean, people still say it. I say it as a UC fan, but
it's almost become breaking the barrier of beating a dead horse. So, like, when you say a joke and it's funny at first, and then you just keep saying it, and then you're like, oh my God, you're beating the
I'm
dead
more worried
horse.
about winning the shootout. Like, it's embarrassing to lose the shootout 4 times in a row.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, you tell a joke and you hammer it home. It's funny at first, then you hammer it home, and they're like, oh my God, this tired joke. And then you break a barrier to where it's become its own inside joke that you're saying it so much, and then it's funny again. So, like, that's where the Final Four thing, it's broken the barrier. Like, oh, yeah, we haven't been to a Final Four thing. Sure. Go ahead and give it to that. Go ahead and give it to me. It's breaking that barrier.
So, it's related to that. During COVID, I went back and I knew the first baseball game that I'd ever been to, but I think I had a picture from it, but I wasn't sure. But I knew for a fact I remembered what the very first baseball game was I ever went to, and I knew it was it was Synergy Field when I went there.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was a fight because my favorite player growing up was Barry Bonds. And
it's great.
And
it's great ball player.
San Francisco was in town, so my parents took me to a Giants and Reds game. I don't know how old, not very old, but I knew at that game there was a fight at that game. That was all I remembered from that game, was that there was a fight. And I remember the benches clearing. Wild first game. So during COVID, I tried to go back and figure out when that game was. I was like, God, was I 7, 8? No, like I was old enough to remember it. Maybe I was 5. I don't know. I went back in the archives. I paid for a subscription to the archives of the Cincinnati Enquirer. I went back to 2000. I have the cover photo right here. Red streak is over, but bad blood isn't. And I found the cover from the day after that game. It was April 29th, 2002, so the game would have been on the 28th. It probably would have been when I was in town for Easter break. Or Easter.
Barry Bonds hit 46 home runs in 2002.
2002. And there's a picture. Who is that on the cover? Sean Casey. He got hit by Felix Rodriguez.
They went to the World Series. Giants went to Game 7 of the World Series. That's when Dusty Baker got fired because he had bad relief pitching.
Dusty Baker. Thank God he finally won one, because Dusty Baker.
No one
deserved to get fired
in the history of sports.
Like no one got unjustly fired more than Dusty Baker. Right. I mean, that guy was in the World Series, got fired, went to some franchise that hasn't won in a long time, got to the World Series, or got close to the World Series, fired. Goes to the Reds, been terrible forever, gets them to the playoffs, postseason a few times. Well, he just can't get over the hump. Fired. Goes to Washington. Fired.
Goes to Washington 2 years, wins like 95 games each year. Fired.
Fired. And he has to go to the lowly Houston Astros, it felt like, where everybody hated him, and then all of a sudden he had to win there. It's like
great marketing.
It was one of the best.
Move.
Good PR move by the Astros. My son's in here spamming the chat. One thing about my son, who just started to kind of get into sports. Obviously, he's 10 now, and he understands all of it. I fear for him because he grows up with my fandom, and one of them's the Georgia Bulldogs, the other one's Kansas. I mean, we're going back-to-back national championships. Kansas won the national championship last year. The first real memory I have, we talked about all these things, the first real memory, like Paul said, I have of being a real dedicated, diehard fan is I cried when I was in 8th grade when Kansas lost to Syracuse in the national championship with Heinrich and Collison. Akeem Warwick blocked Brandon Rush shot in the corner. And that was heartbreaking. My son's never had to do any of that. He's never had a heartbreak. Besides the Packers. He did cry last when the 49ers blocked the punt. We'll get there. But, I mean, I don't feel sorry for him. He's had to endure little to no pain until he figures out
Well,
my first Cubs memory is Steve Bartman, guys.
Yikes. Well, while I was getting my haircut last night, we were talking about moments like when you've cried about sports, and I was like, I can't remember the last. Oh, well, I do remember. I was like 9, 10 when I cried because I was sad about a game.
I cried of joy, guys. I was at the drink and I was tearing up when the Bengals were just beating the brakes off the Bills this weekend. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
I was
But sadness. When was the last time you cried because you were sad because of a game? I mean, I was 8, 9.
You okay? This is not me trying to bring up a bad memory, but that Wisconsin shot at Xavier, you didn't shed a tear on that one.
No.
Are you kidding me?
I mean,
it's like the heartbreaking loss, dude. When you see loss to Nevada, up 22 with 11 minutes to go to bring up all the best Cincinnati sports memories, I turned off my phone for 3 hours and just laid on the floor.
No. I didn't. No. I mean, it was a bad loss, but like, I don't know. No, I did not cry.
I don't think I've ever said that publicly, but that's
You haven't cried? You haven't cried over a sporting event ever?
No. When Brett Favre lost to the Saints.
How old were you?
What year was that? 2000.
2008? To these Vikings,
11?
right?
It was his Vikings
2008.
year. I was 11, I think.
Emperor is saying that Mahomes supposedly practicing today. I don't call me an ankle expert. I seen someone in the chat say that I was an ankle expert earlier.
Just put a brace, slap a brace on
I don't see it. I don't see it.
He's gonna play.
The only way is if this is a spin zone. You ready for this one? The only way that he plays is if he's out there dramatizing this ankle injury, saying it's this high ankle injury. He's wobbling around all game, talking about how it's hurting, throws his jacket around, acting like he's broke his leg. And next thing you know, it's not as bad as – that's really not that bad. A real man would have just not hobbled around.
How awesome would it be if they were like, all right, we're going to add a new rule. If defensive linemen can wear clubs with a broken wrist, Patrick Mahomes gets a scooter, and he's just rocking around in the pocket with those knee scooters, you know what I'm talking about, when they break their ankle?
Yeah.
That'd be just ridiculous. Just him in the pocket.
They should do something like that. The Chiefs are kind of funny. Like the whole ring around the rosy thing. It's kind of funny.
Out, like for the first play, like he came out of the sideline and just came out on a scooter, and then they like took the scooter off the field, but just made kind of a joke about it.
What are the odds that the Bengals do the ring around the rosy thing as a celebration? It's got to be pretty high, right?
Very high. If they're up they're up like 2 touchdowns with 4 minutes to go and the ball and like they're just running the clock out, they have to do that when they go to line up to do a play. They have to.
Yeah. That would be an all-time moment in sports fandom history for me, because there's nothing better than to see the bullies and the trolls to get trolled. We'll see. I don't know why I don't have such a distaste for the Chiefs. I think I have a distaste.
Bills fans do. I can tell you what. And we heard it. I don't know if you did. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you did, Casey. But literally every single Bills fan said expletive Chiefs.
Yeah.
They hate them.
They hate them. And now they hate us too.
Yeah, I think anybody that takes something away from you, you're not going to like. Steelers, you don't like them. The Browns, you don't. The thing about the Browns is you don't really hate the Browns because they've never really taken a whole lot from you, but you just dislike them because they always act like they're relevant when they've never been relevant to a certain extent. That's the way I look at it from the outside looking in.
This guy stinks!
There's some truth to that.
It's probably similar to like a Cardinals fan to a Cubs fan, or a Cardinals fan to a Reds fan. You're just like, why do you hate? Like, you hate me, so I'll hate you back, but like you don't affect me at all.
Right.
Don't affect me at all.
I think the disdain for the Chiefs comes from my personal self, is that they've put the Chiefs. They started comparing the Chiefs to the Patriots when they won 1 Super Bowl. The Patriots won 7. It's like, maybe I read too much into that narrative, but it was like, oh, the next dynasty. The Chiefs are the next dynasty. And it's like, what? They're the dynasty? How are they a dynasty? They won 1 game, or they've won 1 Super Bowl. The other teams won 7. But the vault's not doing well for me, guys. I might have to take, I don't want to say a break. That's probably the wrong word to use. But, man, I'll tell you what. It's not been going good for me. I made a mistake last night. I'll tell this story. From a
Who
responsible.
sponsors this show again?
Bedfred Sportsbook sponsors this show, and they're the best sportsbook there is in Ohio. You got to be 21 plus in Ohio to gamble, and if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Last night, the Georgetown Hoyas, we all rooted them on to victory. They won. The game comes on right after FS1. Boise State v. Fresno State.
Go Broncos.
One game in which, to be frank, if you're rooting hard for that game, you might want to call the 1-800-GAMBLER number. So I'm like, I'll pass the time here. I don't know. Should I use units here? Should I even say
units?
Should I use units?
Units.
Okay, units. I'll use units and not the number.
'Cause
it's a lot. I put into the live bet. Let me back up. Boise State was like 12-2 or 13-2, 5-1 or 6-1 in the league, playing Fresno State, who had a bad record, and somehow Fresno State's winning 11-2 right when I turn it on, and my brain immediately goes, which maybe this is a problem, maybe it's not, I don't know. That's for you to decide. My brain immediately goes, I got to see what the live line is, because clearly there's a situation that's happening that's not supposed to happen, and I'm going to try to take advantage of it. So I wanted to put in, let's call it a half a unit. Just kind of one of those things where I go get a cup of coffee and whatever. I'll relax and watch sports and get into the Discord and chat around with the guys. I accidentally put, 10 units on this?
You accidentally hit another 0.
Yeah, I basically had it. I put an extra 0 in what I wanted, and I freaked out. I when I say my heart sank in panic, it sank in panic as like I just made a huge mistake. So what I ultimately had to do was watch this game, sweat this game out for the next 4, 5, 6, 8 minutes or whatever it was. It felt like an eternity of praying to God that Boise State made a big enough run that I could just put a same amount size bet on the opposite side so I can't lose. I'll lose my juice, if you will, the little 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks that it was going to cost me just to get myself out of this hellhole that was sweating out a Mountain West game in my bedroom at whatever time it was.
It was late.
It was late. So I had Boise at -6.5, and I had Fresno at getting 8.5. So I got lucky to where I hedged it. But then I started thinking, wait a minute. If this game ends where Boise State wins by 7 or they win by 8, I win both the bets. And it's turned into an electric factory towards the end, didn't it, Paul?
Yeah, it did.
I sent a text to Paul, and I said, for your eyes only. But I need to show you what I'm doing right now. And what was your immediate reaction when you seen this text?
Well, I do appreciate that you knew that I was watching that game already. And, so I get this text from Trace, and it's just like oh, no. And I was like, all right, well, we got to lock in here and see if we can get the Broncos home by 7 or 8. And I looked at it, and I was like, he must be really confident in Boise State. And then I saw the follow-up, and I was like, what is going on here? And then I realized we probably had an issue. And it was the same issue that Reed had in the UCLA game the other night, where you were hoping that you had an opportunity to hedge it. You got lucky and got a chance to hedge it. Reed didn't.
No.
And thank God you didn't hedge it, because you would have lost your hedge.
Right.
So you got lucky.
Yeah, I got really lucky.
And what I will say is that you would have won the original bet.
I know.
So, I mean, you don't want to sweat it, but like if you hadn't ever gotten that hedge, you would have won the original bet.
I know.
So that's good.
It is good, but it actually isn't good, because I ended up losing the juice because I made a mistake when I would have theoretically just won the little measly bet that I made originally that I intended to make.
Yeah.
That's here nor there. So the whole lesson in this is that don't rush when you're trying to put in a bet. Don't hit an extra 0 and then hit the submit button, which I have a problem, to be honest with you, because they should move the "Are you sure?" button a little bit off to the side.
Yeah.
Right? When you tap the screen and you're like, did it go through, and you tap it again, and it just so happens that right at the last second it pops up the second dialog box. It should be somewhere else, but that's here nor there.
And this is not a Betfred. Betfred does it, but a lot of other books do it. So this is not a knock on Betfred. I'm just more of a betting thing in general. When it counts down, when you go to submit your bet, actually Betfred might not do it. I don't know. because I don't.
Do you use other books?
I've scaled back my live betting to like 0.
It's the devil.
It is cost me. So I
yeah. Responsible. That is what it is. You got
when you go to put in a bet and it counts down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it submits, it'll change the odds in those 5 seconds.
It did that to me too.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like a team will make a 3 or something crazy will happen, and it'll be a significant change in those 5 seconds. That's happened to me like 3 times. And I'm done with the live betting for a while because, boy, I've made some money. And
that actually happened to me last night.
Yeah.
I went to put it in at 5.5.
Yeah.
And then it popped up and it had an extra 0 in it, and it was 6.5.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Well, all right. The chat is electric right now.
What is going on?
How about last night? You talk about live betting or just the craziness of betting with basketball games. I know I texted you about Wyoming and they blew it, but UNC, it was minus 4.5.
Yep.
And it was at 4, and they got 2 free throws, and the guy misses both.
Yep.
Oh, did they really? So they didn't cover? UNC didn't cover?
No.
They got fouled with 0.7 seconds left.
Oh, he just has to make one.
Throws. Just had to make one. Missed both.
Oh, my goodness.
Not good.
So we got some games tonight. Let's run through them.
All right, let's go to the vault.
Because this is the official, unofficial college basketball show of Chatterbox Sports. It's going to have to be.
So
based off of the
Tom
conversation.
loves college basketball.
So in the Discord.
Has Tom ever listened to a Rebound Rundown episode?
No.
Not a chance.
No.
Rebound Rundown, what's that?
No, he has not.
So the talk in Discord this morning, I've seen it on Twitter, seen a few people tweet about it, obviously because of the proximity. We're here in Cincinnati. The Xavier UC line is 6.5, guys. God dang. UConn. Still UC.
Oh, I thought you were doing a
still
shtick
UC.
there. No, I just.
Oh, I thought you were doing a shtick. Yeah. Okay.
Still works. University of Connecticut. Yeah, it still works. UC. UConn line. Minus 6.5. Xavier, better record. Better ranked.
Yeah.
Already beat them.
Feels like a trap, doesn't it?
Playing better as of late, although they did lose to DePaul last week, but UConn has lost 5 of their last, 7? 5 of their last 6. This seems like a trap of all traps. And I've already seen people in our Discord talk about hammering it.
Yeah, don't do that, guys.
I'm going to advise you to stay off of it. Yeah. That being said, I'm taking the money line because I'm going to watch the game. I'm going to be rooting for a Xavier win. And if you're going to give me +2 on a Xavier win that I'm going to be rooting for, sure. I'll take it.
I do think it's a little bit of a trap, but even at 8, I think it's down to 6.5 now. But when it opened at 8, I mean, even if Xavier doesn't win, 8 is so many points in a game like this.
Correct.
Both these teams get up and down the floor, though, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my point. When sometimes I look at a line, you have to judge whether or not, like, what the total is, the over/under. That has to come into play. That has to be a mindset. 8 points in a UCLA game, as we've talked about before, and we made jokes about it and laugh about it.
Yeah, when you're 11-point favorites, that's a tough.
You ever watch? I mean, let's be honest. When you watch college basketball, at times a 6-point lead in certain games feels like a 15-point lead, and an 8-point lead feels like it could be gone in the matter of 90 seconds. And that's where I think that this game is more of the lead's gone in 90 seconds type game, right? I haven't watched Connecticut play a ton. I've seen Xavier play a good amount. I was shocked that they were giving, whichever side you're talking about, but UConn's giving that many points. But can I play devil's advocate about Xavier for a minute?
Yeah.
Sure.
All of their home games that they've played have been somewhat tight, and they've won them, right? When they've gone on the road, they've struggled at times. I haven't watched every single game of theirs like you guys have, so I'm nowhere near as knowledgeable as the two of you, and I openly admit that. But you look at a team like DePaul, who just beat Xavier.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Xavier struggled with Georgetown, but I'm saying that they didn't run him out of the gym. And Primo Spears is a part of that conversation. He had a great game. So
he kept them right around double digits the majority of the game.
If Primo Spears doesn't play well, then you could say that Georgetown gets smacked in that game, and rightfully so. Well, my point is if I'm looking at Xavier from an outside perspective and I'm not in the weeds of it like you guys are, They didn't blow out Georgetown. They lost to DePaul. Now they got to go on the road, which is something they haven't had to do a whole lot in this league yet against good teams. And they got to play a team that's hungry to finally get back on track, and a team that they're not going to sleepwalk against. They're going against the team that's winning the conference. You add all that up, and that's why I'm saying that line can make sense. Not saying it's right, just saying that I'm not. If I were to have to gamble on this game, I'd have to bet UConn just because it seems like a trap. It seems like that's the thing that everyone wants you to do as the opposite side.
Here's the flip side to that is a lot of these Vegas lines are very correlated to what the computer numbers project on games like this for college basketball because there's just so many games that you have to turn around and set lines for every day. This college basketball lines get set based off of data every day. And you look at Ohio State, who right now is 11-9, and they were 4-point underdogs last night against an Illinois team that has been up and down this year, and it's tough to get a read on Illinois. But Ohio State got blown out by Illinois. Ohio State has now lost, I believe, six of their last seven games. They do have that win over Iowa. But my point is that the computers love Ohio State right now, and they are not conceding defeat on Ohio State, and no matter how much they lose, they still stay in that.
Ohio State is on the do not bet list. Ohio State is never to be bet upon.
No,
you can keep them off the they're not officially part of the Discord do not bet list.
Yeah, it's Illinois that's on my do not bet list because I'm on the wrong side of them winning a blowout, and I'm on the wrong side of them losing a blowout. I got no idea what the hell's going on with Illinois.
Can you see this UConn team that was earlier in the season blowing out everyone? I mean, I'm looking at their November scores. They beat Oregon by 24. They beat Alabama, who's going to win the SEC, by 15. They beat Iowa State by 20. They beat Oklahoma State by 10. They beat Florida by 21. And ever since they came into the Taz on December 31st, they've won 2 out of their last 7 games. So it's just a matter, like before Xavier played Connecticut, before UConn played Xavier, they were a hot button, like this is the best team in the country. Because they were kicking everybody's ass. And since then, obviously, they lost 5 of their last 7. So you're just wondering, that's why this spread's so big, because Connecticut has that capability to run you out the gym. But they've showed it.
That, and to finish up my Ohio State point, the computers still love UConn. They started the season 27th. They got all the way up to number 1 on the computers. And now even though they've lost 5 of 7, they're still only at number 6. Right. And their numbers back that up. So that's where you could have that. But anyway, that's not my pick of the night. My pick of the night, I'm rolling with them. I've rolled with them all calendar year now since the flip of the new year. They have not let me down. They're an absolute wagon. I don't care who they're playing. I'm taking Alabama.
Okay.
Taking Alabama. Whatever the point spread is, I'm taking Alabama.
Also worth mentioning, I think the line right now is 153.5 for the Xavier game. They're like 14-4, 14-3 on overs this year. Xavier
like
games
that,
on.
Yeah.
Something nuts. And granted, 2 out of their last 3 games have gone under.
And the Bengals game is also down. The odds have updated since we put the bottom scroll in there. It's down to 1.
Seho, you like a game tonight?
I am going to take Xavier to cover 6.5. That's what I saw on? Is that still valid?
Do you lose your
somewhere around in there?
Alumni card for UC?
No, this is for monetary purposes, not fan.
I didn't know if that worked.
And I'll say this, I do. Gosh darn it, it's
$1.
I went like the first week we did that without saying it and calling everyone out. I liked working with Travis Steele a lot. Sean Miller was one of my first guests on the Mental Game podcast, so I do root for Xavier some nights. Tonight will be one of them.
Okay.
Case. What kind of parlay you got going for us, Case?
76ers spread 5.5. Kyrie Irving score 25+ points, and Ben Simmons over 8 points gets you plus 450.
Nice. Almost hits. Doc, you got one for us?
I've been struggling on college basketball mightily, very, very poorly. Last night was a just tough night. One thing that I'm not sure if it's I got the jury's still out, as I say. These teasers that you can do in college basketball that are like 3 or 4 legs that pay around even money. they might turn out to be bad news bears as well.
Yeah.
But yesterday, I was 100% right on 3 of them, and I forced myself to do the thing that we all said don't do, which was the Ole Miss situation. But last night, I was getting 31.5 points with Eastern Michigan.
Imani Bates.
Imani Bates went off. If you didn't see that, that's one of the most remarkable college basketball performances of all time. They did not win, but they came close to winning. I think there's something to the idea of finding dogs and or favorites that you love and teasing them with the 10 points and doing 3 of them. So I'm looking through it right now. Florida's playing South Carolina tonight. Florida's giving 15.5. I think that's one that I'm probably going to tease down. To what, 5.5? Thinking that's a bad idea. You think South Carolina's going to have another rerun of Kentucky?
No, I've never. You see the board clearly majority of the time, and you're.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
You are.
Because
you're stepping up to the golf ball, and you don't like your club. You don't like your club. You're not a lot of confidence.
That's a perfect analogy right now, because oftentimes the thing that we rely heavily on is nails, and it doesn't lose like it lost last night. And when I say lose, I'm talking like when the team doesn't cover by 10 plus points.
Right.
Like it's not even like I was just got a little unlucky and I was on the wrong
side.
Like
the UNC one. You were on the right side of that. It just
right.
Yeah.
Maybe. Were you on the right side of the UNC one? Because they were down by 4. No, I'm saying they were down by 4 though, Paul, with like
But
a
it wasn't.
minute left.
But you weren't blown out the gym.
Yeah.
Is what you're getting.
Yeah. I feel as if the system and the analytics that you talked about with Connecticut and Xavier, that whole situation, they get stuck on these teams, and I'm just not sure if we should keep just like I did with the NFL 2 years ago with the Jaguars.
Are we gonna put the Rebels on the no bet list?
They have to be. Ole Miss is terrible.
I
was so not upset's the wrong word. I was so baffled last night that there's a head basketball coach that works in the SEC. I had to look his name up. I forgot his name already.
Just means more.
But there's a coach at Ole Miss last night that took he had no timeouts left at the 16-minute and 20-second mark of the second half. How do you burn through all of your timeouts with 16 minutes left in the game?
You can't take them with you.
I mean,
it's not a retirement fund, Trace. Go use them, baby. Live life.
The last thing I have is Huggy Bear. This is serious question.
Oh, we're back on that. We're back on that. Oh, that's a new one. Sorry, I was thinking Cowboys.
Is Huggy Bear close to being done?
Yeah.
I love Hugs, but he's got to be close, right?
Yeah.
He's close.
Who else is close on that list? And let's leave.
Then Mick will go there. Then John Brannon.
Boeheim's. You know what? This is a wild take I have. Boeheim is incredibly selfish at this point.
Yes.
What a selfish, righteous asshole.
Oh.
I mean, he built a program. Right. Give him all the credit in the world. Genuinely mean that. But at what point do you bury the it reminds me of the guy that and maybe it's his money to lose. It reminds me of the guy that built his family's net worth up to millions of dollars. And he's got generations sitting behind him waiting for him to pass over the throne. And he's just out there just splurging, spending money left and right. And the next thing you know, he's going to turn around and hand over this fortune to his kids, and there's not going to be a fortune left. How long until Syracuse basketball is irrelevant before he decides, you know what, this isn't fit for me anymore? I got to get out of here. That's incredible. He's being selfish.
He's being Patrick Mahomes. Let Chad Henne play. Let Chad Henne coach.
Where are we going to lunch?
Yeah. Lunch wheel.
Put Gina's on there. We haven't been there in
Hides,
a long time.
Waffle House.
God, Waffle House.
Don't. Whoa.
I just don't like it for lunch. You do that before 10 a.m.
Or after.
Or, yeah.
Waffle House. Put it on there.
Waffle House at 2:30 would be a tough sell for me.
Well, it's only 1:30, so. You sell us on Taco Bell literally all the time.
Yeah.
That's true. You can go to Waffle House one time.
That's true.
I'm tired of Taco Bell. Tired. It's tired.
But I can't even read what we got up there.
You got Waffle House. You got Hides.
Yep.
Gina's.
Yep.
All it up.
Chipotle. That's all I got on there so far.
You guys don't like sushi, do you?
I like sushi.
Yeah.
Firehouse?
No roll on in.
I used to not like sushi, and then
Firehouse.
gave it a shot.
Any burger place?
King?
Yeah, put
Burger King.
Whopper. Single, double, triple, Whopper. You know what the better song is? Where he's
Flame
like,
grilled steak with
that can't
all
be the
the
real
toppers.
price. I just checked out. That is the real price.
BK.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
You rule.
All right, that's it. Spin it.
I should have spun it with the 2. All right, let's go.
I feel like the text is wildly
what's
small
going on
today.
with the text here? I have to look at the.
I just put caps in the. In some
What's
of
out?
them.
That's
We won't-
ridiculous.
Yeah, we won't. We'll never get hides.
We'll never have anything nice. What about us thinking about we were going to do the show remotely? Look outside in the morning and there's just no snow.
I think it's low-hanging fruit to make fun of
Kids are off school.
meteorologists. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do to predict the weather. But boy, oh boy, did they swing and miss on this one. They've swung and missed twice. We were supposed to get an inch on Sunday. We got 6.
Meteorologists' job largely is just to read data and display it to the public. If you
Right,
think about it, they're not predicting anything.
Right, they don't got a crystal ball.
No, they're just looking at their things that they were taught and they
is that?
portray that to the public.
Waffle House.
So
What are the 2 options left?
Whopper, you can't see, can you?
I can't see any.
the weatherman,
Firehouse and Whopper.
the weatherman is just the Oh, this is
Trace,
I
we're
should-
fighting for our life on lunch right now.
We are.
Firehouse, we got it. That's good.
What was the other option?
Whopper.
Whopper.
Hey, I serious. Last take of the day. You ready? I need folks to help me remember what word I'm thinking of. The messenger. Okay. I just thought of this, and this is maybe shows you how
Stroke of genius.
maybe I'm not the brightest of the bunch. But the weatherman and or woman is just the messenger.
Right, they're just reading what they've
If we
learned.
want to get mad that they're wrong, theoretically, we should start getting on the people who come up with the
data tracking
tracking system. Let's
Yeah.
get on their ass a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's put them in the spotlight. Who are the
Yeah.
people behind the scenes making the data tracking systems? I want the names of the companies. I want the people on the boards of those companies. Let's get down to it. By next show on Friday, I'm going to come with something serviceable. I'm not going to say it's great, but I'm going to come with something that says these are the people that come up with the systems, and these are the people we should be getting on the next time we have a weather problem. It's not the messenger. You can't shoot the messenger, Reed. Right? Am I wrong on that take?
No, you're right.
Whoever's making the Doppler radar and or the statistical algorithms or the Farmer's Almanac, whoever's making those, that's who we need to figure out and go
Who
after.
sponsors this show?
Bedfred Sportsbook.
What is this show called?
It's called The Box Lunch, presented by Bedfred Sportsbook. Thank you for watching. If you are going to gamble, gamble responsibly. 21 plus in Ohio. If you have a gambling problem, as always, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you don't have a gambling problem, get in the Discord and have some fun with us tonight. How about that?
Let's go.
All right?
Hell yeah.
I'm getting back on the saddle tonight. We're going to win some money. See ya.